Chapter 89. The bells signaling the end of class had already rung for a while, and the other students had already left their seats. They either went outside to relax or gathered in groups of twos and threes to chat. Each class at Baron Richter Magic Academy lasted an hour and a half, so the break between classes was a bit longer. It was around 20 minutes, so of course the students had to seize this time to relax. Only Vivian was an exception. Other than going to the bathroom, Vivian did not leave her desk at all. She had her head down the entire time, seriously looking over the notes she had just taken from class. She read them over and over again, trying to firmly engrave the knowledge in her mind and try her best to understand it. After being sent to this academy by Sue E., Vivian had always been like this, desperately studying. Because her parents were slaves, Vivian was born as a slave. So in the 14 years before Sue E. bought her, Vivian had always lived as a slave. Although Viscount Leslie was much friendlier to his slaves compared to the other nobles, slaves were still slaves. The so-called friendliness was only limited to not being easily abused or killed. Of course, it was impossible for Vivian to receive an education. After changing to Sue E. as her master, Vivian found that her life had greatly changed. Not only did she not have to worry about food and sleep, she only had to do some simple chores. Moreover, Sue Yi's attitude towards slaves was even better than Viscount Leslie's by several times. After Vivian knew that she had been bought by Sue E., she had already prepared her heart. She thought that Sue E. was like other people with special tastes, liking her body that hadn't grown at all. However, Sue E. had lived with her for 2 months, but he hadn't touched her once, not to mention doing anything to her. This made Vivian feel a bit happy, but also a bit disappointed. She had finally met a master as good as Sue E. If he really wanted her body, perhaps he wouldn't sell her to anyone else in the future, right? Of course, this wasn't certain. Vivian had heard of some people who bought female slaves, and after they were tired of playing with them, they would sell them to the lowest prostitutes, accepting a cruel fate. But no matter what, the nervous Vivian never thought that Sue E. would actually let her go to school. Going to school, for Vivian, this was something that she had been filled with hope for, but she had to give up in the end because of the ruthless reality. She knew that she was just a lowly slave. In the signs, even normal citizens couldn't receive an education, not to mention a lowly slave like her that no one cared about even if she died. So when she heard Sue E. ask her if she wanted to go to school, she was stunned for a while. But after confirming it again and again, she happily agreed. In the blink of an eye, Vivian had already been studying at Baron Richter Magic Academy for more than a month. Although the Baron Richter Magic School was called Magic, it was not only it was also called Magic. At first, this school was founded by Baron Richter to specially teach magic, but after several hundred years of development, this school had become the largest comprehensive school in Banda City. Other than teaching magic, they also taught all kinds of basic knowledge like languages, history, culture, and even painting. Because Vivian had never received an education before, Sue E. first enrolled her in a basic language class, having her learn the basics of reading and writing. Other than this, he also enrolled her in a painting class. Although Vivian had never received an education, her intelligence wasn't weak. Adding in her incomparable thirst for knowledge, in just a short month, she had learned how to read and write in almost every language. Even if she couldn't understand everything, there was no problem with some basic reading. Compared to the language class, Vivian's performance in the painting class could be considered stunning. Sue E. found that Vivian had talent in painting from the paintings she drew in her free time. After coming to the Baron Richter Magic Academy, her talent instantly exploded under the guidance of the painting teacher. In just a short week, Vivian had already conquered the teacher, making the strict painting teacher call her a genius artist that hadn't been seen in several decades. The current Vivian was already a bit famous in the Baron Richter Magic Academy because of her strong talent in painting. It was a pity that this fame didn't bring her many benefits. Rather, it brought her some trouble. After finishing her revision, Vivian left the language classroom. When she was on the way to the painting classroom, she was stopped by 3 people. "Hey, dear Miss Vivian, can you give me the honor of having dinner with me tonight?" The young boy in the middle of the 3 looked at Vivian and spoke in a very glib tone. Vivian looked at him and recognized that he was Enrique from the magic department. "I'm sorry, I don't have time tonight." Vivian flatly refused. Ever since he saw Vivian in the painting class and witnessed Vivian's strong talent in painting, Enrique seemed to have taken a fancy to Vivian and started to pursue her. However, Vivian felt that she had finally obtained a precious learning opportunity, so how could she waste her time on dating Enrique? So no matter what Enrique asked, Vivian directly refused and didn't give him any chance. "It doesn't matter if you don't have time tonight, but you'll have time tomorrow, right?" Enrique didn't seem to want to give up. "I don't have time tomorrow either." Vivian shook her head again and seriously said to Enrique, "Can you please give up?" After spending so much time with Sue E and being influenced by Sue E, Vivian was no longer as timid as before and dared to speak her mind. Enrique's face changed. He didn't think that Vivian would reject him so straightforwardly and without leaving any room for negotiation. In front of his two friends, Enrique suddenly felt very embarrassed and couldn't help but speak in a cold voice. "Miss Vivian, I just want to have a meal with you and chat with you. You don't have to be so heartless, right?" Vivian blinked, not quite understanding Enrique's meaning. After all, she was only a little girl who wasn't even 15 years old, and because she had been living the life of a slave, she wasn't very proficient in the ways of the world and couldn't understand the boring self-esteem of this little boy. However, her attitude angered Enrique even more. Enrique's face sank. He thought for a moment and suddenly grabbed Vivian's arm and said in a deep voice, "I'm telling you, whether you're willing or not, you have to agree today. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." Seeing Enrique's two companions come over, Vivian suddenly thought of when she was Viscount Leslie's subordinate and when she was beaten by the guards for doing something wrong. Her face instantly filled with fear and her body began to tremble. Seeing Vivian reveal a look of fear, Enrique gave a proud laugh and prepared to pull Vivian out of the school. How could Vivian's strength compare to Enrique's? Although she wasn't willing, she couldn't help being pulled by him. If it was any other girl, they would definitely be screaming for help. However, Vivian had been a slave since she was young and was already used to her low status, used to being bullied by others. Although her heart and body were very resistant, she didn't have any thoughts of asking for help. Only in her heart, there was a cry that sounded, "Master, save me." Enrique, who was dragging Vivian along, suddenly stopped in his tracks as a figure appeared in front of him. "Hey, uncle, do you want to meddle in other people's business? Let me tell you, it's best if you don't." Enrique had only said half of his words when a fireball suddenly flew at him. Enrique was scared and quickly let go of Vivian's hand as he raised a water shield in front of him. It had to be said, Enrique's magic level wasn't bad. In this kind of situation, he could actually raise a water shield. Although this fireball didn't seem like anything special, it was strangely strong. Enrique's water shield was instantly broken and the fireball exploded on his chest, sending him flying. Enrique had just fallen to the ground when another ball of water fell down. It extinguished the flames on his chest and also made his entire body ice cold. It was already the beginning of November, and it was already slightly cold in early winter. Now that his entire body was soaked in cold water, he naturally felt a wave of extreme cold. Enrique, who had almost fainted from the bombardment of the fireball, woke up from the cold. Seeing that person walk in front of him and look down at him, Enrique's heart was filled with shock and fear as he hurriedly shouted, "You dare hit me! Do you know who my father is? If you dare to do this to me, do you believe that I'll get my father to find someone to beat you into a cripple?" He lowered his head to look at Enrique, who had some of his hair burned off by the fireball and was soaked in water. He couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. "Oh, who's your father? Tell me." My father is the chairman of the Fulcao Chamber of Commerce. Let me tell you, I know a lot of powerful magicians. Any one of them can beat you into a cripple." Speaking of his father, Enrique seemed to have suddenly gained courage. Since it's Chairman Morgan's son, then it's really hard to deal with. He made a difficult expression. Enrique thought he was afraid, so he jumped up from the ground and pointed at Sue E as he arrogantly said, How about it? Now you know how to be afraid? Humph. Let me tell you, since you made me like this, don't think I'll let you off. Just you wait, I'll definitely tell my father about this, and you'll get it. Sui nodded his head in praise. Not bad. You know you can't beat me, so you want to ask your father for help. I originally wanted to take care of you, but it's a pity that I can't do it because of Chairman Morgan's face. No matter what, Chairman Morgan said that we're good friends. Making a move on the son of a good friend is a bit like bullying the young. Enrique was stunned. Hearing this person's tone, it seemed like he was an old acquaintance of his father. His father even said that they were good friends. If it was like this, then it would be bad. To be called an old friend by his father, it would normally be someone who had business dealings with him. His father viewed the benefits of the company as more important than anything else. If he told his father about what happened today, not only would his father help him get revenge, he might even be taught a lesson by his father. You, who are you? Enrique hesitated a bit and finally couldn't help asking. Not bad. You finally know to ask for my name. He grinned. Listen well, I'm called Sui, the chairman of the New Flyer. Enrique's face turned ashen. Chapter 90. Seeing Enrique and the other two running away with their tails between their legs, Sui turned around and asked Vivian with a frown, Vivian, it seems that this kid has been pestering you for a long time, right? The reason why he appeared at Baron Ricto Magic Academy today, in addition to teaching a basic magic machine theory class, was that he had some important things to do. Who knew that when he had just finished his class and walked to the campus, he would see Vivian talking to 3 young boys in the distance. At first, Sui thought that the 3 boys were Vivian's classmates, and was happy that Vivian had made friends in such a short time. He even guessed that there might be Vivian's suitors among them. But after a while, he suddenly saw one of the boys grab Vivian and pull her out of the school gate. Although Vivian did not call for help, both her expression and her actions revealed her incomparable resistance. How could Sui tolerate this? Vivian had lived with him for several months, and he had long regarded Vivian as a family member. So, without saying a word, he came up and directly sent Enrique flying with a fireball, not giving him any chance to defend himself. However, Enrique was actually the son of the president of the Fulcao Chamber of Commerce, Fuller Morgan, which was greatly beyond Sui's expectations. Because New Flyer had joined the business union, the relationship between the Fulcao Chamber of Commerce and New Flyer was now in a honeymoon period. The relationship between Sui and Fuller Morgan was also quite good for the time being. If President Morgan knew that Sui had actually taught his son a lesson, although he would not blame Sui for this, there would still be some awkwardness between the two sides. Yes. Hearing Sui's question, Vivian lowered her head and responded. Then why didn't you tell me earlier? Sui grabbed Vivian's arm that had been pulled by Enrique just now and took a look at it. He found that her arm had been pinched until it was bruised. It could be seen that Enrique had used a lot of strength just now. What if I wasn't here today and that kid really did something? Vivian lowered her head, and after a while, she whispered timidly, I was afraid that Master would be worried. Sui sighed and patted her head. Idiot, if something really happened to you, it would be too late for me to worry. If you encounter this kind of thing next time, be sure to tell me. Understand? Vivian nodded lightly and made a sound of acknowledgement. Sui suddenly laughed. By the way, Vivian, you have improved. Vivian looked at Ad. She did not understand. You're actually afraid that I'll worry about you? This proves that you've already treated me as family in your heart. You know that I'll be worried. Not bad, not bad. It's not to say you've improved up your ass. Vivian's nodded hers as she's is up. Seeing the smile on Sui's face, the last trace of fear in Vivian's heart disappeared. She gave Sui a sweet smile, her face blushing. How about this? Since something like this happened today, you can go to the teacher and ask for leave. Don't go to class today, go home and rest. If I find time to come back tonight, we can go out and find a place to eat. What do you think? Out of Sui's expectations, Vivian actually shook her head after hearing his suggestion. No, I'm fine. I still want to stay in the academy for a while longer. It's good to be able to study a little more. Vivian looked at Sui with a hint of hope. Oh, You that interested in studying? Sue sighed, thought for a moment, and agreed to Vivian's request. After that Enrique found out his name, he probably wouldn't have the guts to find trouble with Vivian. If it really didn't work, Sue could ask Director Shearer to take care of Vivian a bit more. After all, the Baron Richter Magic Academy had taken that many gold coins from Sue, so there had to be a bit of a discount. After asking a few more questions about Vivian's studies, Vivian mentioned that her drawing class was about to start, so she bid farewell to Sue and left. Sue once again went to the Academic Affairs office to meet with Hiller. This time, Sue came to Baron Richter Magic Academy. Other than teaching a basic magic machine theory class, another important thing he had to do was to sign an agreement with Baron Richter Magic Academy. In between teaching the basic magic machine theory class, some students of Baron Richter Magic Academy, including Oren, privately expressed to Sue that they were very interested in magic machines. After they graduated from the academy, they wanted to join New Flyer to continue researching magic machines. Sue naturally expressed his great welcome. The reason why he spent so much money to teach the basic magic machine theory class in Baron Richter Magic Academy was to attract the interest of the students who studied magic in the academy, so that they could participate in the research of magic machines. Although Sue had a lot of mechanical knowledge that had been deeply researched on Earth, the theory of magic machines was still a completely new topic for him. It was impossible for him to completely research the theory of magic machines by himself. He needed a large number of magicians to participate and integrate the strength of more people. Only then could he create a complete theory of magic machines faster and better. Although there were more than 10 students who expressed their interest in this aspect, Sue still felt that it was too little. After careful consideration, he simply discussed it with Hiller, who represented Baron Richter Magic Academy, and decided to set up a bursary fund in the name of New Flyer. This bursary fund was divided into two types. One was for the poor children in the academy. As long as they applied, and after verification, they would be able to receive the bursary fund from New Flyer, which would help them pay part of their tuition and living expenses. The other type was specifically for the magic department. The amount of funding was higher than the previous type, and the requirements were also higher. The students of the magic department who received the second type of bursary fund would be able to receive full funding from New Flyer during their time in the academy. Not only did it include full tuition and living expenses, but it also included additional funding, which would allow the students to obtain better conditions for magic research. Correspondingly, the students who received the second type of bursary fund would have to become employees of New Flyer after graduation for a minimum of 3 years. As for what the students wanted to do after 3 years, New Flyer wouldn't have any restrictions. After hearing Sue Yi's bursary fund proposal, Hiller was both happy and worried. He was happy because if the bursary fund promised by New Flyer became a reality, then it meant that many students who couldn't continue their studies due to family circumstances could rely on this bursary fund to continue their studies in the academy. No matter if it was for those children or for Baron Richter Magic Academy, this was a good thing. But he was worried because this way, the students of Baron Richter Magic Academy would definitely have a greater sense of identity with New Flyer, especially the students of the magic department who applied for the second bursary fund. No matter what they wanted, they had to work for the Frestec Chamber of Commerce for 3 years after graduation. This was equal to the Baron Richter Magic Academy training a group of magicians for the Frestec Chamber of Commerce. Hiller was an old qualified magician, so he always thought that the most important thing for magicians was to increase their magic power and work hard to become stronger. As for magic application, especially New Flyer's magic machines, it was just a crooked path. It wasn't enough to become the right path for magicians. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't reject Sue Yi's bursary, he wouldn't have even agreed to let Sue Yi teach the basics of magic machines. Finally, Hiller's worries were beaten back by Sue Yi's words. The bursary fund is completely voluntary, so our New Flyer won't force the students to accept it, nor will the academy force them to accept it. It's no different from before. Rather, we can give the students the right to choose. Not to mention that if the students don't even have the financial resources to support their studies, even if they don't accept our bursary fund, they won't be able to walk down the path of magicians. Do you think that comparing this, which result is better for the students? Hiller was convinced by Su Yi's words, so he went to convince the other school leaders, finally bringing together Baron Richto Magic Academy and Su Yi to reach this agreement. Su Yi came today to sign this agreement. The negotiations had already ended. After Su Yi met with Hiller and the principal, they smoothly signed the agreement on behalf of New Flyer and Baron Richto Magic Academy. Nothing unexpected happened during the whole process. The only disharmony was the bitter smile on Director Shearer's face when he looked at the signed agreement. Chairman Su, if our school had enough funds, I definitely wouldn't have let the students walk down this path. Su Yi revealed a faint smile. Mr. Hiller, perhaps you think that studying magic machines is a crooked path and not the right path. However, I believe that it won't be long before you realize that combining magic and machinery and letting magic successfully serve humans and improve people's lives is the true right path. When that time comes, the students who come out of the academy and enter our New Flyer to study magic machines will definitely create value that far surpasses what they would create if they became traditional magicians. Hiller looked at Su Yi and gave a sigh. I hope it's like this. For example, oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar for daily use, rice and flour, fruits that the workers were reluctant to buy, and, although these things are not expensive, they were all things that the workers needed. Most of the time, the effect of these things was not any worse than paying salaries. If it was said that the newly recruited human workers weren't too assured about the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, now that they had been working for the Frestec Chamber of Commerce for 2 months, these human workers no longer had any doubts about the Frestec Chamber of Commerce. Not only did they have a stable wage here, they also had all kinds of benefits that they never thought of before. Even the work here was much easier than other places, and the boss wouldn't scold or beat you for no reason. For many human workers, this place was simply like heaven. Not to mention doubting the New Flyer now. If Su Yi were to fire a worker, that worker would immediately cry and wouldn't be willing to leave. Of the 300 workers in the Household Magic Machine Workshop, there were 100 workers that were rather special. Seeing the other human workers happily coming forward to receive their wages, these 100 workers were all on the side. Although their faces were filled with envy, their hearts didn't have any expectations at all. These 100 human workers were naturally the 100 slaves that Viscount Leslie had given Su Yi. After knowing that they had been given to Su Yi by Viscount Leslie, these 100 slaves were all very happy. This was because they were clear that following Su Yi as their master was much better than being under Viscount Leslie. Of course, they still remembered their status as slaves, so they didn't dare have any expectations for their wages. They all belonged to Su Yi, so working for Su Yi was a matter of course. It was already good enough that they were given food to eat, so how could they be given money? So when a slave heard Seabass, who was in charge of giving out wages, call out his name and came in front of Seabass, he found that Seabass didn't give him daily necessities like he expected, but rather a money pouch. He was instantly stunned. This is for me? Bazak carefully pointed at the money pouch as he spoke with a look of disbelief. Right, it's for you. Quickly take it. Next. Seabass threw the money pouch to Bazak and loudly called for the next slave to come forward. Bazak held the money pouch in a daze as he returned to the group of slaves. The slaves on the side couldn't hold back their curiosity and urged him to open the money pouch. Bazak's hands were trembling as he spent a bit of effort to open the money pouch. Instantly, there was a bright golden light that came from the money pouch. Lying in the money pouch, if it wasn't glittering gold coins, then what was it? The surrounding slaves stretched out their heads and looked at the money pouch. They couldn't help but exclaim together. The youngest of these slaves was over 20 years old, but it was the first time they had seen gold coins. Moreover, these gold coins belonged to them. 1, 3, 7, 8 gold coins. Bazak slowly counted the gold coins in the money pouch and couldn't help but excitedly roar. God above. Bazak, actually had 8 gold coins. This must be the manifestation of God. Oh no, This must be Su Yi's grace. Bazak suddenly ran 2 steps and arrived in front of Su Yi, who was standing behind Seabass and looking at this month's accounts. With a plop, he knelt down and kowtowed. Su Yi was startled and quickly pulled him up. Looking at Bazak's bleeding forehead, he asked in amazement, "What are you doing?" I want to thank Lord Su. You must be a great god who has descended," Bazak said with some inarticulateness. Su didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't think that just giving him the salary he deserved would make him this excited. Waving his hand to stop the other slaves who were ready to move, he shook his head. He was too lazy to explain anything to Bazak. He called for 2 slaves to support him and stop the bleeding. Then he waved his hand to signal Seabass to continue giving out the salary. On the side, Hines suddenly frowned. He came to Su Yi's side and said in a deep voice, "Su Yi, I've already said that it's best not to give these slaves a salary. Doing this will give you a bad start. I'm afraid it will arouse the disgust of the other nobles in the kingdom." Su Yi glanced at him and said with a relaxed smile, "Don't worry. Didn't I say last time that I'm not a noble yet? I'm just doing what a merchant does. Those nobles won't mind what a small merchant like me does. In any case, it has nothing to do with them." "Then you don't want to be a noble in the future?" Hines asked. He closed the account book and thought for a bit. Then he said with a serious face, "I want to, and I really want to. I wish I could be a large noble right now. On the continent, being a noble makes it much easier for me to do many things. At the very least, I can have my own territory and do whatever I want. It won't be like right now, where I'm only expanding the factory and my hands are tied." Hines turned his head and looked through the window of the workshop at the construction site that had already been built. According to Su Yi's real thoughts, when he was building the new workshop, he wanted to replan this large piece of land and lay the foundation for future expansion. But Hines reminded him that the land they were using was Viscount Leslie's territory. If Viscount Leslie changed his mind in the future, then all the hard work Su Yi and the new flyer had invested in this piece of land would instantly disappear. So Su Yi was helpless and could only build a new workshop for now, but he had to suppress the industrial area plan in his heart. Su Yi's eyes followed Hines to the construction site, and he said with a soft sigh, "If you gave me a piece of land, I think I would definitely be able to build a complete and beautiful industrial area on that piece of land. It would be much better than this messy place." Hines said with a bitter smile, "It's a pity that you're not a noble." Su Yi suddenly winked and revealed a smile to Hines. "I'm not one now, but that doesn't mean I won't be in the future. Perhaps when I come back from Anvilmar City, you'll find that I've already become a noble." Hines was stunned. He looked at the mysterious Su Yi, and his heart was a bit shocked. He had heard Su Yi say that when he went to Anvilmar City to participate in the Sorcerer's Guild certification exam, he would be summoned by His Majesty. Could it be that he had obtained some inside information? However, Su Yi didn't have any intention of explaining. Seeing that Seabass had already given out the wages to the workers, he called Alex over and had him organize the workers to prepare for the banquet. He then called Hines, Camby, and Seabass to his office. Chapter 92. I think that the 3 of you already know that I will be leaving tomorrow and taking a trip to Anvilmar City. When the 4 of them sat down, Su Yi directly said this. Hines, Camby, and Seabass looked at each other before nodding. "This trip is different from when I went to the dwarf tribe, including the journey back and forth. I'm afraid it will take at least 10 days. If there's any unexpected delay, it's possible that it will take more than half a month. Because it'll take a long time, we have to make some arrangements for the company's work during this time." Su Yi nodded to Seabass. "Seabass, first tell me about the company's financial situation during this time." "Yes, Sir Chairman." After being together for a while, Seabass was no longer as respectful to Su Yi as before. Rather, he began to treat him as his superior. He immediately replied when he heard this and opened the account book in his hand, looking it over before continuing. "Because our company has received large amounts of orders for magic machines during this time, and adding in the fact that our production has been smooth, our profits have been very stable, and our company's financial situation is very good. Just based on last month's data, We made a profit of 11,423 gold coins. Although this month's data isn't out yet, based on the current situation, in the next 3 months, the company's profits will break through again. Although Hines and Canby were high-level managers of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, they only had a general idea of the company's finances and didn't know the specific numbers. Now that they heard Seabass say a large number of 10,000 gold coins at once, they couldn't help revealing smiles, especially since Hines had 20% of the shares in New Flyer. If these profits were distributed, it meant that he would earn over 2,000 gold coins a month. If it was when he opened the general store, this large number only existed in his imagination, and he never thought that it would become reality. Of course, after being by Su Yi's side for a long time, his eyes were no longer that short-sighted. Of course, it was impossible for him to take out these profits and distribute them now. Of course, apart from the profits, the company's expenditure is also quite large. Cybuster paused for a moment before continuing. The biggest expenditure is the workers' salaries, which totaled up to 5,761 gold coins this month. In addition to the various welfare expenses, the total amount spent on the workers this month is 6,347 gold coins. So many. Hearing this number, Hines and Canby were simultaneously speechless. Although the two of them knew that the total salary of the workers should be quite high, when Seabass revealed such a large number, it still gave them a fright. That's all. So he looked at the two and nodded. So now the two of you have to find a way to improve the production efficiency of the workers. Try to produce more qualified products in the same amount of time. Canby and Hines glanced at each other, revealing a troubled expression. The workers are already working very hard. If we want to increase efficiency, I'm afraid the gains won't make up for the losses. Hines thought about it. I don't mean to squeeze them dry, but to increase production efficiency through other means, Su Yi said. Give an example, Hines. Do you still remember the suggestion I gave you last time? Hines thought about it. You're talking about the time you had me move the screw production magic machine behind the workers, right? Although this is a very small change. After the small magic thread rolling machine produces the screws, it can be used by the workers much faster, which indirectly increases the production efficiency by a bit. According to this example, you can think of many other ways to increase the efficiency of the workers. Hines and Canby gave thoughtful nods. Su Yi then said, of course, the method of increasing production efficiency can't just rely on the workers. I've already started working with Great Magician Camilla on a new generation of production magic machines. If they succeed, the efficiency of the new generation of production magic machines will be several times higher than the ones we're using now, which will greatly increase production efficiency. At the same time, I've also developed some small magic machines with Steele's group to help the workers finish their work. For example, Steele's group is currently developing a small magic drill. If they can make it, the workers in charge of the equipment can directly use the tool, and they won't need to slowly screw in the screws, which will also increase their speed by several times. Hines and Canby looked at Su Yi in surprise. Why didn't you tell us before? Although Seabass didn't ask, he still stared at Su Yi. As the representative Viscount Leslie sent to the New Flyer, of course he needed to understand the current movements of the New Flyer, so he could report back to Viscount Leslie. Now that Su Yi had revealed that he was researching all these new things, he didn't know about this at all. If Viscount Leslie knew about this, he definitely wouldn't be happy. Su Yi waved his hand and said with a smile, because these things were just ideas before, it was useless to say anything. Now that there's a basic framework for the magic array and the basic structure of these magic machines, when I come back from Anvilmar City, I believe that Great Magician Camilla and Steele's group will give me a satisfactory answer. When the time comes, I'll look for you to do the final research on the structure and confirm that it's finished. Before this, you just have to wait patiently. Hines and Canby nodded, showing their agreement. After being with Su Yi for several months, they were already used to Su Yi making decisions, and they were only responsible for carrying them out. Seabass thought about it before tentatively asking, Sir Chairman, as for the new magic machines and the small magic drill you mentioned. Should we inform the Lord Viscount? Sue, you revealed a smile. There's no need for you to tell him. I'll be heading to Anvilmar City with the Lord Viscount tomorrow. I'll find time to tell him on the way. The three of them were stunned again. Sue, he was actually going with Viscount Leslie. This was a bit out of their expectations. The Lord Viscount hasn't been home in a long time, so while I'm going to Anvilmar City, he's planning on bringing me to his house as a guest while going home to take a look. Sue, he explained. Camby didn't have any special reaction, but Hines and Seabass' expressions couldn't help changing. Sue, he said it very casually, but the two of them were very clear that Viscount Leslie's actions meant that he had already accepted Sue E and was planning on introducing Sue E to his family. If nothing unexpected happened, this meant that it was very likely that Sue E would be under the influence of the family behind Viscount Leslie. Seabass' eyes looking at Sue E became much friendlier because if nothing unexpected happened, everyone would be on the same side in the future. Hines, on the other hand, frowned slightly before relaxing his brows, although he felt that it was a pity for the new flyer to become a vassal of a large family. This was something that couldn't be helped. In the signs, without the support of large nobles, normal merchants and companies wouldn't be able to gain a foothold. Since Sue E had chosen Viscount Leslie from the start, it was best if he didn't change his tune. Otherwise, he would be abandoned by everyone and his final outcome would be very ugly. Sue E saw the changes in their expressions and revealed a faint smile. It wasn't hard to guess what the two of them were thinking, but Sue E might not be like what they thought, completely throwing himself to the family behind Viscount Leslie. Of course, obtaining a certain amount of support was necessary, but maintaining a certain amount of autonomy was something that Sue E insisted on. As for how to achieve a balance, that was a problem that Sue E had to face. Seabass, the report isn't over yet, continue. Sue E said to Seabass. Yes, Sir Chairman. Perhaps it was because he was already treating Sue E as one of them, but Seabass was now even more respectful to Sue E. He replied in a loud voice and lowered his head to look at the accounts. After a slight pause, he said with a bit of hesitation, other than the expenses for the workers, the largest expenditure comes from Sir Chairman's various investments. This includes the 500 gold coins a month for the dwarves and the 200 gold coins a month for the materials research that isn't fixed. There is also great magician Camilla's investment of 1,000 gold coins a year, which averages out to 83 gold coins a month. Then there is the investment for young Miss Steele's group of 3. This is a bit less, spending a total of 57 gold coins last month. Adding in the bursary fund Sir Chairman proposed 2 days ago for the Baron Richter Magic Academy, I've estimated it to be around 100 gold coins a month. Calculating it like this, we can't calculate the expenses you propose for now, but it should be around 1,000 gold coins a month. Too much. Too little. Hines looked at Sue E in a daze. You think 1,000 gold coins a month is too little? Sue E, our company only earns 10,000 gold coins a month. Taking away the wages of the workers, we only have 6,000 gold coins left. If you spend another 1,000 gold coins, we'll only have 5,000 gold coins left. What? You think 5,000 gold coins is too little? Sue E looked at Hines. To be honest, I really feel that 1,000 gold coins is too little. If I had a choice, I would even want to invest all of the company's profits into research. Are you crazy? Then what money are we making? Hines couldn't help loudly saying. As a major shareholder of the New Flyer, he could accept Sue E taking out a portion of the company's profits to invest in research, but he definitely wouldn't accept Sue Yi's idea of investing all of the company's profits into research. Sue E gave a shrug. He already knew that Hines didn't have long-term vision, so he wasn't surprised by his reaction. What is Viscount Leslie's opinion? Sue E asked Seabass. Seabass hesitated a bit. He looked at Hines and said with a forced smile, Sir Viscount said that he promised Sir Chairman that he wouldn't participate in the company's decisions. He doesn't have any opinions on what you want to do. Is that so? Sue E revealed a smile. He turned to Hines and spread his hands. The meaning was clear. Hines gave a cold snort, but he didn't say anything else. Sue E looked at Hines and suddenly revealed a mysterious smile. He waved his hand at the three of them. Actually, I have a plan that will make the company earn a lot of money. Do you want to hear it? Heinz's mind shook. He was very clear on Su Yi's abilities. Since Su Yi said this, it meant that he really did have a feasible plan. Therefore, Heinz immediately perked up, leaned over, and listened carefully. Chapter 93. 2 days later, a motorcade of 7 horse carriages slowly entered the Lampari Kingdom's capital, Anvilmar City. When a motorcade passed through the city gates and turned the first corner, Baron Hannes jumped out of the first horse carriage. Leslie, Su Yi, I'm going home alone first. I'll come find you when I have time. That's right, Su Yi. Perhaps my father will be interested in meeting you. Then I really am honored. Su Yi said with a smile. Baron Hannes knit his brows and shook his head. My father. Forget it. Since you came here with great difficulty, it should be a good thing for you to see more people. All right, it's settled like this. I'll be leaving first. Goodbye. After saying this, he waved his hand at Su Yi and Viscount Leslie in the horse carriage before turning the corner. He's prepared to walk back? Su Yi watched Baron Hannes walk down the street, filled with people, and was a bit surprised. The Toil Marquis Manor isn't far from here. Viscount Leslie casually explained. Then he gave an order to the driver, and the motorcade headed off in another direction. As the capital of the Lampari Kingdom, Anvilmar City's liveliness was not something a small Bana city could compare to. The motorcade didn't move smoothly in the city, spending an entire half an hour before they passed 3 streets. If we didn't bring that many things, we might as well jump out of the horse carriage and walk over. Su Yi opened the curtains and looked at the crowded streets outside. He thought that the large cities on Earth had traffic jams, but he actually encountered them in this world. There's no other way. Anvilmar City is the largest city in the kingdom, so of course there are more people than Bana City. Then again, it's almost time for the Sorcerer's Guild certification exam, so there are more people in the city than usual, so it would be strange if it wasn't crowded. Viscount Leslie also looked out the window. He didn't have an anxious look on his face. Rather, he had a faint smile. When I was young, I would often sneak out to play alone on the streets. Seeing the current situation, I actually quite miss it. Su Yi gave a shrug, thinking that he had no way of resonating with Viscount Leslie. The motorcade was still moving slowly on the street. Fortunately, the destination was not far away. Su Yi was not in a hurry. He relaxed and looked at the street outside the window. It was like Viscount Leslie said, because it was close to the Sorcerer's Guild's exam, there were many magicians wearing robes in Anvilmar City. Some were alone, some were in groups of 2s and 3s, and there was even a group of young people who looked like they were in their teens. These kids should be from some magic academy. Viscount Leslie looked at the group of children in uniform not far to the right of the horse carriage before turning to Su Yi with a strange smile on his face. Hey, Su Yi, I heard you set up a bursary fund at Baron Ricto Magic Academy a few days ago. Are you planning on tricking those students into working for your company? What do you mean by tricking? Su Yi glared at Viscount Leslie. I've clearly stated those conditions. How can it be considered a scam? Then again, working for a new flyer after graduation isn't considered burying them. The salary won't be low, and they'll be given a lot of room to develop. This kind of good thing, many people can't even think of it. He pointed at the group of children outside the horse carriage after saying this. Let me tell you, if possible, I even want to set up a bursary fund for Shinfei in every magic academy. It would be best if all the children who study magic knew about the existence of New Flyer. Viscount Leslie took a deep look at Su Yi. You're planning on using these children to change the magician's views. You can see through it? Su Yi revealed a smile, but his expression was a bit helpless. There's no other way. It's too hard to change the views of adult magicians, so I can only plan for the long term. Actually, it's not as hard as you think. Viscount Leslie said in a thoughtful voice. Think about it. Since you can convince great magician Camilla, you can also convince other magicians. To put it bluntly, as long as you can give them enough benefits, it is not impossible to change their views. Of course, if you want to change the views of the entire Sorcerer's Guild, with your current strength, I'm afraid it's not realistic. Su Yi gave a sigh. Sir Viscount, you're speaking nonsense. Viscount Leslie laughed. I won't interfere with the company's management decisions, so I'm just giving my thoughts. As for how you listen, that's up to you. He rolled his eyes at Viscount Leslie. When he was about to refute him, there was a pitiful cry in front of the horse carriage that cut him off. Looking at the sound, he saw that there was an empty space in front of the horse carriage. A man wearing a dirty black robe had rolled a few times, blocking the front of the horse carriage. If it wasn't for the driver reacting fast enough and stopping the horse, he would have been stepped on by the horse. 3 luxuriously dressed young men came out of the crowd, and after looking at the person on the ground, the young man in the middle kicked that person's chest as he cursed. I already told you not to block this young master's path, but you actually didn't listen? Don't you think you're asking for a beating? As he spoke, the young man kicked the man again and again. It was unknown if that person didn't dare resist, or if he didn't have the strength to resist at all. Although he couldn't help arching his body with each kick, he only gave a groan and didn't have any other reaction. He knit his brows. He looked at the 3 young men and then looked at the person on the ground with hesitation in his heart. This situation made him feel somewhat unbearable, but these 3 youths were dressed luxuriously and dared to act so arrogantly on the streets of Anvilmar City. He was afraid that they might be the children of some noble family. If he rashly made a move, he might get into trouble. While He was hesitating, the other 2 young men also joined in on the beating. The 3 of them moved together, and after several kicks, the person on the ground suddenly opened his throat and spat out a mouthful of blood. It spilled all over the stone road, looking very shocking. Cries of surprise rang out from the crowd of onlookers. Clearly, they were also frightened. There were some people who also revealed looks of hesitation, but no one stood out. It was clear that they had the same scruples as Sui. However, Sui couldn't take it anymore. His body moved, and he prepared to jump off the horse carriage. But as soon as he stood up, Viscount Leslie on the side grabbed him. Sui, you want to meddle in other people's business? Viscount Leslie asked. Sui looked at him and said in a cold voice, Lord Viscount, perhaps a noble like you is already used to this kind of thing, but I still can't get used to it. Viscount Leslie couldn't help laughing. I'm just asking you, why are you taking out your anger on me? It's not like I'm the one hitting people. Sui was silent. Viscount Leslie shook his head and said with a sigh, I thought that with your performance in Banna City, you wouldn't be this hot-blooded, but I never thought that I was wrong. Sui knit his brows. Lord Viscount, just what do you want to say? If there isn't anything, don't delay me from saving people. If you wait any longer, that person might be beaten to death. Viscount Leslie laughed and stood up to push Sui back into his seat. He opened the curtain of the horse carriage and jumped out, coldly shouting at the 3 young men, Victor, Sel, Urget, after not seeing you for 2 years, I never thought that you 3 brats would still be like this. Why aren't you quickly stopping for me? Who the F***CK dares to yell at this young master? You're looking for death. The young man in the middle had just finished his kick when he heard someone yell at him. He immediately raised his head in anger, but just as he cursed, he suddenly stopped. The arrogant expression on his face instantly turned pale, as if he had seen a ghost. The other 2 young men felt something was strange and looked up at the same time. After seeing Viscount Leslie, their faces instantly turned as pale as the young man in the middle. Viscount Leslie laughed and said to the young man in the middle, Victor, you're quite bold, actually daring to say that I'm seeking death? Are you here to accept your punishment, or do you want me to take care of you? The young man called Victor trembled, and his expression changed several times. But in the end, he still walked in front of Viscount Leslie with a bitter look. Sui was close, so when he heard him walk over, he begged Viscount Leslie in a low voice. Big brother Leslie, there are many people here. Give me some face. Viscount Leslie gave a cold snort and nodded before suddenly raising his leg to kick Victor in the stomach. Pong! This kick was clearly not light. Victor bent over in pain, but he didn't dare cry out in pain. After a while, he stood up straight with a few drops of cold sweat on his face. Viscount Leslie crooked his finger at the other 2 young men. The 2 young men looked at each other before obediently walking over with bitter smiles. Pong! Pong! Viscount Leslie didn't waste words as he kicked each of them in the stomach. Based on the sound, they could tell that it was not any lighter than the one he kicked Victor in the stomach. After kicking them, Viscount Leslie waved his hand at the three of them. "All right, you can all scram now." It was like the three of them had been pardoned. They turned and entered the crowd, disappearing without a trace. The crowd originally thought that someone might die today, but they didn't expect that someone would suddenly jump out. The three noble young masters who were incomparably arrogant a moment ago were like mice that had seen a cat. This matter was easily resolved. Seeing that there was nothing to see, the crowd scattered, but no one cared about the person lying on the ground. He jumped out of the horse carriage and reached out to support that person, but he saw that person struggling to stand up. He didn't even look at Viscount Leslie, who had saved him, as he slowly dragged his body away. Viscount Leslie saw that he was still staring at that person's back as he left, and snappily said, "Hey, Sue, you wouldn't be telling me that you want to be a good person to the end and find a doctor to treat him and give him some money, right?" This fellow didn't even say a word of thanks. "I'm afraid he's not worth it." He watched that person disappear into an alley before turning around. He said with a face filled with doubt, "Strange. Why did I feel a strange magic fluctuation from him?" It wasn't like magic, but rather a magic array. Viscount Leslie was stunned. "You're saying he's a magician? It can't be right. How could a magician be in this kind of situation?" He shook his head. Of course, he didn't know the specific reason. Chapter 94. The small disturbance on the road didn't delay them that much. Rather, because of this matter, the crowd around them had dispersed a bit, allowing the motorcade to move a bit faster. After 10 minutes, the motorcade finally arrived at their destination, the Banta City office in Anvilmar City. Of course, this was what called this place. Actually, this was the residence of Banta City, Lord Count Sean Samo in Anvilmar City. Count Sean Samo had a residence in Anvilmar City, but after becoming Banta City Lord, he had sold his original residence and changed it to a smaller courtyard. Other than when Lord Count came back to Anvilmar City, this small residence was used as a temporary residence for the people that came to Anvilmar City on Lord Count's orders. So he called it the Banta City office in Anvilmar City. He came to Anvilmar City this time mainly to participate in the Sorcerers Guild's certification exam, so he wasn't qualified to live here. But since the king was summoning Lord Count wanted to be cautious, so he asked to live here as soon as he came to Anvilmar City, making it easier for the king to summon him. This was Suyi's first time in Anvilmar City, so he wasn't familiar with this place. Of course, he wouldn't reject Lord Count's suggestion. Moreover, this would make it easier for to reject Baron Hannes and Viscount Leslie's help, so he wouldn't owe them another favor. The manager of the office had clearly been notified by Count Samo, so when he saw Suyi's personal letter and Viscount Leslie accompanying him, he immediately warmly welcomed and welcomed Sui in. But seeing the 6 horse carriages behind them, the manager and his servants were a bit surprised. These 6 horse carriages were clearly trucks, but they were tightly wrapped up, so they couldn't see what was inside at all. Based on the outside, the things inside were sharp and looked a bit fierce. Find a safe place to put these things. You can't lose them. It's best if you don't let anyone approach them. Understood? He pointed at the things in the horse carriages and seriously ordered the manager. "That's right. Be careful when you unload them. You can't break them." Seeing how serious was, the manager nodded. Count Samo's personal letter had requested him to treat as himself. This manager was deeply trusted by Lord Count, but this was his first time seeing Lord Count give this kind of orders. Naturally, he knew that this normal of a young man in front of Lord Count, so of course he was very respectful to Sui. The servants followed Suyi's orders to carefully unload the goods from the other 6 horse carriages into the warehouse. Viscount Leslie rejected Sui and the manager's invitation to stay and directly left. Sui enjoyed a sumptuous lunch in the office before taking a nap. When he woke up, it was already afternoon. Seeing that it was still early, Sui decided to go out for a stroll. Waving his hand to reject the manager's suggestion of arranging a servant for him, Sui left the office and strolled around Anvilmar City. Of course, he wasn't just strolling around aimlessly. While walking on the street, Su-yi was looking around. He was different from other people strolling around. Su-yi's focus wasn't on the beauties on the street or the fine goods in the shops. Rather, he was looking in all directions, not letting go of a single corner. His focus was to see if there were any magic machines hidden here. According to what Su-yi knew, Banda City was less than 400 kilometers away from Ambilmar City. By Earth standards, they were simply next-door neighbors, so they should be able to communicate with each other. But because of the limited transportation and information transmission methods, the 400 kilometers of distance meant that the magic machines that were very popular in Banda City and the surrounding cities couldn't be found in Anvilmar City at all. It seems like this is still a piece of undeveloped land. Su-yi gave an emotional sigh in his heart, not knowing if he should be happy or disappointed. He was happy that he hadn't seen a single magic machine in Anvilmar City. As long as he could sell the new Flyers magic machines, there would be a large market for him. He was disappointed that the world's reaction to the changes he brought was a bit slow. After several months, there weren't any signs of change in Anvilmar City. There's still a long way to go. Su-yi gave a sigh and ended this short market inspection. He asked around in a small store on the side of the road and found the location of the Sorcerer's Guild before quickly heading over. If it was said that one could see magicians wearing magic robes all over Anvilmar City, when Su-yi arrived at the Sorcerer's Guild in the west of Anvilmar City, he found that looking around, there were all kinds of magicians wearing magic robes. It was hard for normal people to see them. Su-yi looked over and saw that not far away from him was the group of uniformed youths that he had seen on the road. At this moment, they were gathered together and listening to what a middle-aged magician, who was about 40 years old, was saying. It seemed like this middle-aged magician was their teacher, and he was currently explaining some things to the students. Seeing the excited appearances of these children, Su-yi thought of the spring excursions he had in elementary and middle school. He couldn't help smiling as he took a few more looks before heading into the Sorcerer's Guild. There were just too many people, so Su-yi spent quite a bit of effort to squeeze in. He was different from most of the other magicians who came for the exam. Su-yi didn't go to the registration window. He looked around and came to a door that led to a room. Line up over there if you want to register. You can't just enter this place. The one guarding the door was an old magician with a white beard. When he saw Su-yi come over, he reprimanded him without any politeness. Su-yi gave a bow to the old magician with a smile before taking out a letter from his chest. The old magician suspiciously took the letter and opened it to look at it. When he raised his head to look at Su-yi, his eyes were filled with even more doubt. "Hey kid, how old are you this year?" the old magician asked. Su-yi was stunned. 27, why? You're already 27. The old magician's face had a trace of disappointment. You're this old, and you still haven't passed the primary exam. Your talent should be very bad. How could that fellow Camilla waste such a precious recommendation on you? Su-yi was a little speechless. He thought that it wasn't any of his business who great magician Camilla gave the recommendation to, right? It was a good thing that the old magician only muttered a few words and didn't ask any more questions. He looked at the recommendation letter again before looking at Su-yi. With a sigh, he moved out of the way. Su-yi took back the recommendation letter and gave another bow to the old magician. Then he walked through the path that the old magician moved out of the way. The inner room was much quieter than the outside. Su-yi followed the old magician's directions and easily found the exam application room at the first corner. After knocking on the door, he saw that other than a 30-year-old female magician, there was also a 17 or 18-year-old youth. The female magician was sitting behind the table, and the youth was standing in front of the table, as if he was listening to the female magician. Seeing Su-yi come in, the two of them were a little surprised. Su-yi quickly handed over the recommendation letter. The female magician took it and looked it over. Her face had the same doubtful expression as the old magician from before. But different from the old magician, the female magician didn't say anything. She just expressionlessly handed a form to Su-yi and had him fill it out. Then she stamped it and threw a badge to Su-yi. The exam will begin in 2 days. You can use this badge to enter the exam. Don't lose it, the female magician said. Su-yi nodded to show he understood. After waiting a bit, and seeing that the female magician didn't say anything else, he gave her a bow and turned to leave. Before he reached the door, the youth suddenly laughed. "Hey, uncle, who are you to great magician Camilla? Are you his nephew or grandson?" "That's right. I've heard that great magician Camilla has a pretty good granddaughter. You wouldn't be her lover, right?" He stopped and turned to look at the youth with a frown. He found that the youth had a frivolous expression and an uncaring expression. Then he looked at the female magician. She was actually writing something on the table, as if she hadn't heard the youth's words at all. Thinking of the happy conversation between the young man and the female magician, He instantly understood. It seemed like the female magician had a special relationship with the youth. He looked at the youth with a calm expression. "Why do you ask this?" The youth gave a laugh. "Isn't this nonsense? Uncle, you're already this old, and you haven't even passed the primary grade exam. With such a low level of magic, your talent must be very bad. Even with this, you were still recommended by great magician Camilla. If you say that you aren't related to great magician Camilla, how could that be possible? So it's like this." He nodded. "Speaking of this, for you to be able to stand here at such a young age, it seems like you have a special relationship with a great magician." "Bullshit," the youth angrily said. "I, Aaron, am a genius. Do you understand genius? Let me tell you, I passed the primary grade exam 5 years ago. As long as I pass this year's exam, I'll be a 4th grade magician. A 17-year-old 4th grade magician. For a genius like me, there are many great magicians who recommend me. How could I be like a piece of trash like you and go through the back door?" He revealed a faint smile. "Aaron, right? I admit that being able to become a 4th grade magician at the age of 17 is not bad. But young man, I have to remind you that no matter how talented a magician you are, you have to learn some manners. Otherwise, people will think that you don't have a good upbringing." After saying this, he no longer cared about the youth and directly left. The youth was stunned for a bit. Only then did he react and fly into a rage. "This fellow actually dares to say that I don't have a good upbringing. I definitely won't let him off." The female magician had already raised her head at this time. Looking at the door, she slightly knit her brows and turned to the youth to say, He is only a novice magician participating in the primary grade exam. Why are you arguing with him?" Aaron glared at her and angrily said, "I don't care. He actually dares to humiliate me like this. I will definitely teach him a lesson." After saying this, he unceremoniously picked up the form that he had filled in from the table. Looking over it, he said with a cold smile, "Humph, this time I will make sure that you can't even pass the primary grade exam. I will let you know the consequences of humiliating this genius." The female magician had a headache as she looked at the angry Aaron. She wanted to stop him, but she knew that it was useless. This fellow's magic talent was outstanding, and he had a strong family background. He had already developed this kind of arrogant personality, so he wouldn't listen to other people's advice at all. Now she could only pray for Yi's good fortune and hope that he wouldn't be tormented too badly by Aaron. No matter what, he was here with great magician Camilla's recommendation letter. If something happened to him, it would be hard to explain to great magician Camilla. Chapter 95. He wasn't in the mood to argue with a youth that hadn't reached adulthood yet, so after saying this, he left the inner room of the Sorcerer's Guild. When the old magician guarding the door saw he come out, he actually shook his head at him. It was as if he felt that it was a pity that great magician Camilla had given his precious recommendation to He could only smile at him and couldn't explain anything. The situation in the guild hall was no different from when He came in. It was still crowded and noisy. But when He came out of the inner room, he found that there were quite a few gazes looking over at him. Only those with a special recommendation could enter the inner room and enjoy the privilege of registering first. This was something that many people were clear on, so when they saw He come out after going in, it naturally aroused their curiosity. It was different from the doubts in the hearts of the old magician and the female magician. The magicians that were paying attention to he didn't understand great magician Camilla's situation, so they were only envious or jealous that he could receive a special recommendation. Facing these burning gazes, Su-yi didn't have any intention of avoiding them. Rather, he welcomed everyone's gazes and carefully observed them. Looking at the situation in the hall, most of the magicians that came to register were young people. There were only a few magicians that looked older than Su-yi. This wasn't strange. The Lampari Kingdom's Sorcerers Guild was only responsible for the 5th grade and below exams. Magicians of the 5th grade and below could only be considered low-level, so most of them were young people. The older magicians either had very high magic power or were limited by their talent. Their magic power had already been set, so of course they wouldn't come here for no reason. This hall was around 200 square meters. Su-yi estimated that there should be around 200 magicians here. Adding in the magicians outside and in Anvilmar City, there should be over 1,000 magicians in Anvilmar City. Last time when he was chatting with the great magician, Su-yi had curiously asked him just how many magicians there were in the Lampari Kingdom. Great magician Camilla said that he didn't have specific numbers, but according to the Sorcerers Guild statistics from last year, there were over 5,000 magicians in the Lampari Kingdom. If they included the ones that weren't in the statistics, then this number was close to 6,000. As for the signs, the Sorcerers Guild had released a statistic 3 years ago that there were a total of 87,467 magicians on the continent. Including the ones that weren't counted, there were over 100,000 people. Of course, the magicians had a pyramid structure. Of the over 100,000 magicians in the signs, there were only 27 Archmagi, 501 to 5-star great magicians, and the rest were normal magicians from the primary grade to the 9th grade. In the Lampari Kingdom, a 3-star great magician like Great Magician Camilla could already be considered a powerful magician. Most of the people in front of him were normal magicians that weren't that important. When Su-yi looked over these magicians, he wasn't thinking about the cruelty of the magician profession. Rather, he was seriously considering a problem. For a powerful magician like Great Magician Camilla, the Lampari Kingdom would provide special funds to support him. But for normal magicians under the Great Magician realm, they didn't have this kind of income. Then what did these magicians rely on to live? With what Su-yi had seen in Bana City, Great Magician Camilla's magic tower only had less than 20 magicians. Other than that, there were magicians hired by various companies to act as guards. Apart from that, the mages below level 5, who had the largest number of people, would not even have the chance to do so. Then for these magicians who were weak and couldn't increase their strength because of their limited talent, what was their final path? Was it really like what Steele said, finding a few companions and adventuring across the continent? It had to be known that this path was very dangerous. There were countless adventurers who died each year. Thinking of this, Su-yi's eyes looking at the magicians in the hall had a trace of sympathy, as well as a trace of expectation and excitement. With the development of the new flyer, the output of the 2 workshops had gradually increased. Just relying on the students of the Baron Richto Magic Academy to draw magic arrays was gradually becoming unsustainable. Because of this, Director Shearer had complained to Su-yi before, saying that he had sent half of the magic department's students to work, even affecting the arrangements of the school. Su-yi was naturally clear on this. The students' main task was to study. It was impossible for them to spend most of their time working for the new flyer. Su-yi had to find some people to replace them. The problem was that Banta City was a small city and there weren't many magicians in the city. Su-yi couldn't recruit enough people at all. Su-yi had been worried about this before, but now that he saw the hall filled with magicians, Su-yi suddenly found that this problem that had troubled him for a long time could suddenly be solved. Su-yi suppressed the excitement in his heart, and after thinking for a bit, he had a kind smile on his face as he walked over to the closest magician that was sizing him up. "Hello, I am Su-yi and I come from Bana City. Can I ask where you are from?" Su-yi asked this young male magician who seemed to be in his early 20s. The young male magician clearly never thought that Su-yi would directly come over to greet him. After being stunned, he forced out a smile and nodded to Su-yi. "Hello, I am Caesar and I come from Wales City." "Wales City? That is a beautiful city." Su-yi immediately praised. "I've heard that there are many rivers in Wales City and the entire city seems to be built on water. Is that true? Is indeed very beautiful. Caesar casually said this. Finally, he couldn't help asking Sue the question in his heart. You said that you came from Banta City, but I know that there is only one great magician Camilla in Banta City. Were you recommended by him? Sue turned back to look at the passage he had just entered before looking back at the doubtful Caesar and giving a slight nod. Yes, it was indeed great magician Camilla who recommended me to participate in the exam. Then, are you a relative of great magician Camilla? Oh, sorry, I'm not doubting you, but only you don't have a magician badge on your chest, so I think that you shouldn't have passed the primary grade exam, right? Caesar asked. Sue looked down at his empty chest before looking at Caesar's chest. He found that there was a finely made magician badge on Caesar's chest, and on the badge, there were 2 waves at the bottom. This meant that he should be a second-grade magician that had been certified by the Sorcerer's Guild. That's right, I indeed didn't pass the primary grade exam. Sue said with a nod. I think that you must be very curious why I received a special recommendation from great magician Camilla, right? Caesar revealed a smile, not confirming or denying it. The reason why I received a special recommendation from great magician Camilla is not because I have a special relationship with him. Of course, it isn't because my talent for magic is outstanding, but rather because... Sue paused and deliberately kept him in suspense. Seeing that Caesar was completely focused on him, he replied with a smile, because I have some unique insights into magic machines. I'm sorry, you're talking about magic machines? What are those things? Caesar asked in a confused voice. It's like this. With Sue Yi's explanation, Caesar quickly understood what magic machines were. You're saying that you're not studying magic to become stronger, but rather to study magic machines? Caesar looked at Sue with a confused look. This fellow wasn't that much older than him, but he was already the chairman of a company in Banta City. Moreover, his new flyer was actually a product of magic machines, which was even more strange. What magic machines? What could they do? Don't you think that being able to let everyone enjoy the benefits of magic is a very wonderful thing? Sue tried his best to entice Caesar. Sue shook his head. Our Frestet Guild is in need of outstanding magicians like you who can contribute their strength to this cause. How about it? Caesar, are you willing to join our company? Caesar didn't know what kind of expression he should use to face Sue. He was only a second-grade magician. He didn't have enough strength to attract the attention of any company. Now that Sue had suddenly appeared and asked him to join this new flyer, to be honest, he was a bit moved. But when he thought of how this new flyer was in a small place like Banta City and the products it produced were all strange magic machines, he felt a bit of resistance. I'm sorry, I want to focus on studying magic for now. My strength isn't enough. Sue suddenly stretched out a finger. 10 gold coins a month. Caesar almost choked to death on his own saliva. 10 gold coins a month? Although Caesar hadn't been invited by any company, he knew that when many companies invited magicians that they liked, they would at least give them a wage of 20 gold coins a month. Of course, magicians that could be chosen by these companies as guards weren't just weak second-grade magicians like him. They were at least fifth-grade magicians. Properly speaking, Suyi's price was a very fair price for a second-grade magician, but Caesar still refused after hesitating a bit. Sorry, I'm not lacking money right now. Compared to making money, I prefer to make the best use of my time to improve my magic, Caesar said seriously. Caesar said with a serious look, Chairman Sue, many thanks for your good intentions. If there is a possibility of cooperating in the future, I will consider your new flyer. Sue was disappointed in his heart, but he still had a smile on his face as he gave a slight nod. All right, since Caesar isn't willing, I won't force you. But our new flyer will always have our doors open to you. If you have any thoughts of changing, you can come to Banta City at any time. I will always welcome you. Caesar nodded with a faint smile. No matter what, he was very happy to get along with Chairman Sue. After watching Caesar leave, Sue found that he had made a mistake. Based on what Caesar was wearing, his family background wasn't bad. In a situation where there wasn't any financial pressure, with the common understanding of the signs, the most important thing for him was to increase his strength. It wasn't strange that he rejected Sue Yi's recruitment. Sui wasn't that disappointed. After finding this problem, he turned his target to those magicians that didn't seem to have good conditions. After asking 7 people, the results weren't that satisfactory. Perhaps it was because they didn't have enough experience with the new things like magic machines. But even if the conditions of these 7 magicians were normal, there were only 3 that were interested in Suyi's proposal. There was only one that agreed to Suyi's proposal and was willing to go to Banta City to take a look. The remaining 4 people, however, had the same reaction as Caesar. Sui could only express his helplessness. If he wanted to change this situation, he had to change the thoughts of the magicians and the signs first. This was something that he clearly couldn't do right now. You're Sui, right? Sui, it really is you. At this time, a voice filled with pleasant surprise suddenly sounded beside Sui. Chapter 96. Sui turned around in a daze and found that there were 3 young people around 20 years old standing beside him at an unknown time. The one who shouted this was the red-haired young man in the middle. After a moment of surprise, Sui was pleasantly surprised. He punched the shoulder of the reddish-haired young man. "Oh, and it's you. Why are you here too?" The young man named Erwin laughed and gave Sui a big hug. He curled his lips and said, "Are you talking nonsense? Which magician would miss an opportunity to participate in the Sorcerer's Guild's examination? Look, you're here, aren't you?" At this point, Erwin looked Sui up and down with a surprised expression. Sui, you look like you're rich now, aren't you? No wonder you're here for the examination. You used to say you didn't have money every time I asked you to come." Sui smiled. "It's all right." This Erwin was his former classmate at the Sennheiser Academy. They lived in the same dormitory. Although Sui was older than the others in the dormitory, he was still a young man and easily got along with them. In addition, Sui was more mature than the others. He was more knowledgeable and talented in magic. In the end, he almost became their leader. Thinking of his other roommates, Sui looked at the 2 young men beside Erwin and asked, "Have you been in touch with Roy and the others after graduation?" Erwin shrugged. "We went our separate ways after graduation. I couldn't contact them even if I wanted to. If I didn't run into you here today, I wouldn't even know what you're doing. By the way, what are you doing now? Did you find something good? It's only been a few months, and you're already rich enough to participate in the examination." Sui smiled but didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the 2 young men. "Aren't you going to introduce your new friends to me?" "Oh, I almost forgot." Owen slapped his head and pointed to the young man on the left with a strong build and a square face. "They are both my adventurer companions. His name is Rooney." He then pointed to the young man on the right with a thin build and a short stature. "This is Bob." "Hey, Rooney, Bob, this is my classmate from Sennheiser. His name is a bit strange, Sui, but he's a very nice person. We used to be good friends in the academy." Rooney and Bob shook hands with Sui. Sui looked at their chests and found that the magician badge on Rooney's chest was the same as Cesar's, while Bob's only had 1 wave, indicating that he was only a junior magician. Erwin and Sui were the same. There was no badge on his chest that represented his rank. Seeing Sui's eyes fall on their chests, Rooney and Bob looked at Sui's chest. Seeing that there was no badge, their expressions couldn't help but become a bit strange. Erwin was keenly aware of this and quickly explained, "Hey, you two, don't underestimate Sui. Although this guy doesn't have a badge, he's very talented. When he was in the academy, he was almost a 3rd-level magician. But every time we asked him to participate in the examination, he said that he had no money and refused." "No money." Rooney and Bob looked at Sui with even more strange looks. Rooney couldn't help but ask, "Erwin, are all the students of Sennheiser like you, unwilling to participate in the examination of the Sorcerer's Guild?" "Hey, don't compare me to Sui. He has no money, but I couldn't pass in the past. This is completely different, okay?" Erwin shouted. Sui patted him on the shoulder. "That's enough. No matter what happened in the past, since you're here this time, just obediently pass. Erwin, from the looks of it, you should have the confidence to pass the 2nd-level magician examination, right? More or less. It shouldn't be a problem," Erwin answered confidently. Then he glanced at Sui. "Don't just talk about me. When you were in the academy, you were called a rare magic genius by the teachers. I haven't seen you in half a year, so your strength must have improved a lot, right? Tell me, are you planning to directly pass the 4th level examination this time? Hearing Erwin's question, Rooney and Bob showed a look of interest, but they weren't too surprised. Sue, he looked a few years older than them, so it was normal that his magic strength was stronger than theirs. Yes, more or less. Sue, he nodded casually. That's not important. Erwin, why did you think of taking the risk? Don't you think it's dangerous? Erwin sighed. What can I do about it if it's dangerous? I'm not a talented fellow like you who can quickly become an adept magician and never have to worry about food and water. If I don't take the risk, what do you think I can do? With the little magic I know, I'm not even qualified to be an assistant to those great magicians. Rooney and Bob's faces darkened as well. Obviously, they were facing the same problem as Erwin. Suyi's gaze swept across the faces of the three. It seemed that the problem he'd just thought of wasn't a baseless guess, but actually existed. Erwin, what if I said there was a job that would allow you to not face danger, and you could use your free time to study magic? What's more, the job itself is related to magic, and you could improve your strength at the same time. Would you be willing to do it? Suyi asked. Erwin sneered. Hey, Suyi, I haven't seen you in half a year. When did you learn to brag? How could such a good thing happen? Even if you want to comfort me, you don't have to say such fake things, do you? On the other hand, Rooney's expression changed. He asked, how much do you pay for this kind of job? He stretched out another finger. It depends on the situation. However, it shouldn't be less than 10 gold coins a month. 10 gold coins a month? That's not a lot. However, there's no danger and plenty of free time. The conditions are not bad, Erwin said as he touched his chin. Hey, Suyi. You make it sound pretty good, but are you kidding me? You're giving me such a good job? Suyi smiled slightly and nodded seriously. Yes, I'm giving you the job. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. It wasn't until the moon was high in the sky that Suyi returned to the office. The manager had already prepared dinner, but because Suyi came back too late, it was already cold. However, thinking of how Sir Count had specially told him to treat Suyi well, the manager wanted to tell the kitchen to make another meal, but this move was stopped by Suyi. When he was walking around the city, Suyi had already found a random street stall to take care of his dinner, so naturally, he didn't need to eat anymore. Manager Ram, you don't need to worry about this in the future. I'll be eating outside a lot during this time, so I won't be eating here much. You don't need to specially save food for me in the future. Suyi said to the manager. Manager Ram thought about it before nodding in agreement. Suyi had arrived with Viscount Leslie today. It seemed like other than Sir Count's special care, he had some other connections here and wasn't as normal as he seemed. That's right, Chairman Sue. I've already followed Sir Count's orders and reported the news of you arriving in Anvilmar City to the Agriculture Department and His Majesty's Guards. If nothing unexpected happens, they should be notified in the next 2 days. It's best if you don't go too far from here in the next few days. If you go out, it's best if you tell me where you're going so I can find you as soon as possible. Manager Ram said, All right, I'll be careful. Suyi was a bit helpless. There were no cell phones in this world, so it was a bit troublesome to find someone. After chatting with Manager Ram for a bit, Suyi prepared to return to his room to rest. Walking on the road, Suyi thought about his experience today and felt quite satisfied. His initial investigation of Anvilmar City showed that this was still a blank market. As long as he waited for Baron Hannes to successfully set up Anvilmar Daily or Anvilmar Morning Post, he would be able to easily take over this market by relying on this opportunity. Compared to a small city like Bana City, Anvilmar City was without a doubt a much bigger market. Just the people that Suyi saw when he went shopping today was already comparable to the people inside and outside Bana City added together. If a magic fan could sell over 10,000 units in Bana City, then a conservative estimate would be close to 50,000 units in Anvilmar City. Of course, Suyi had already decided to hand over the basic manufacturing technology for the magic fan, so the new flyer would face many competitors in the magic fan market next summer. But Suyi wasn't worried about this at all. Just based on the magic fan, he had many plans that could easily defeat his competitors. Not to mention that he was the one who handed over the technology, which meant that the lifelines of his competitors were in his hands. It was very easy for him to counter them. Other than this, what Sui was most satisfied with today was that he had successfully attracted the interest of 8 magicians, including Irwin, Rooney, and Cooper. He had made them want to come to Banna City to see the new flyer. These 8 magicians weren't important, but there was a trend that Sui was very happy to see from them. It was that there were magicians like Irwin who were weak and couldn't see a future, so they were willing to find another path. With the appearance of the new flyer, perhaps it would give these magicians a new direction to work hard in. It's like this to begin with. Not every magician can become a powerful great magician or an archmagus. What's wrong with finding another job and living a good life? Thinking of the strange expressions Irwin and the others had when they heard that he had opened a company and was producing magic machines, Sui couldn't help smiling. Thinking of the magic machines, Sui thought of the things in the warehouse. He stopped moving and turned in the direction of the warehouse. These things were related to the success or failure of this trip to Anvil City, so he definitely couldn't make a single mistake. When he saw the corner of the warehouse, Sui suddenly found a spark exploding in the darkness in front of him. There was a flame that rose up and instantly covered the entire warehouse. Chapter 97. The next morning, Viscount Leslie, who had rushed over after hearing the news, stood in front of the warehouse that had been burnt to a crisp with a dark look on his face. "How are the losses?" After a while, Viscount Leslie finally spoke to Sui beside him. "I found it early, so there weren't any losses." Sui replied before slightly knitting his brows, looking a bit confused. He had personally seen the spark explode last night, instantly turning into flames that covered the entire warehouse. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't seem like a normal fire. Rather, it seemed like someone had deliberately set it on fire. But Sui had just arrived in Anvil City last night, so he didn't know many people here. Naturally, he didn't have any grudges with anyone. So why would someone suddenly make a move against the things he brought? Hearing Sui's questions, Viscount Leslie was silent for a bit before suddenly waving his hand. He had Manager Ram and the other servants leave. When everyone left, Viscount Leslie gave a soft sigh before saying to Sui, "I've implicated you." Sui was stunned. "Lord Viscount, why do you say this?" Viscount Leslie looked to the northeast outside the courtyard walls, and a bitter smile appeared on his face. "Because someone doesn't welcome me back, and this is a warning to me." Sui opened his mouth, but he didn't ask anything in the end. From Viscount Leslie's tone, he could tell that there were many complicated reasons involved. With Sui's current status, it was best if he didn't involve himself in this. "It seems like it's not safe to put these things here. How about this? I'll find a safe place to store them for you." Viscount Leslie thought about it before speaking. Sui shook his head. "There's no need for that. Since it's been burned once, the other side must feel that these things have been destroyed and won't make a move again. Not to mention that the Lord Viscount said that this was a warning to you, so the goal of the warning has been achieved. The result isn't important. I'll ask Manager Ram to strengthen the security here. It shouldn't be a problem." Viscount Leslie knit his brows. "Sui, these things are very important to your audience this time. Why do I feel that you're not nervous at all?" Sui laughed. "Before I was burned, I was indeed very nervous. But after seeing the fire yesterday, I suddenly thought it through. These things were actually not the key. What was important was the meaning of these things. Even if the things here are destroyed, it's not a problem. After all, new flyer can produce more at any time. Unless those fellows can burn down the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, there's no meaning." Viscount Leslie couldn't help laughing. "You're quite carefree, but aren't you afraid that you won't be able to take out anything when His Majesty summons you?" "I'm scared." Sui nodded seriously. "So, Lord Viscount, you have to do me a favor." Hashtag. After sending Viscount Leslie away, Sui returned to the warehouse. Looking at the burnt black area in front of him, Sui's relaxed expression gradually sank. Just now, in front of Viscount Leslie, he hadn't been completely honest. When the fire started last night, Sui clearly felt a trace of magic fluctuation in it. It could be seen that there was a magician hiding among the people who set the fire last night. To be able to send a magician to do something as small as setting the fire, it could be seen that the other party attached great importance to this matter. It was clear that they were determined to succeed. If it wasn't for Su Yi's timely decision to use water magic to control the fire and neutralize the destructive magic in the flames, even if the things in the warehouse weren't completely burned down, there would definitely be some damage. After thinking for a while, Su Yi walked to another room in the distance. This room was originally a guest room. Because the warehouse was destroyed, Su Yi had Manager Ram move the things in the warehouse here. Opening the door, he saw 6 strange-looking machines standing in the middle of the room. The outer shell of the black flames was mottled, looking very fierce and not very good-looking. These 6 machines were specially brought by Su Yi from Bana City. There were 6 agricultural magic machines, including the small magic harvester, the small magic plowing machine, the small magic excavator, and the small magic plowing machine. Being summoned by the king this time, Su Yi was planning on demonstrating the power of these machines to the king. The nobles of Bana City had already been conquered by these machines, so they had all placed orders with a new flyer. He believed that the king wouldn't be an exception. If the king was moved and promoted the agricultural magic machines across the Lampari kingdom, not only would the new flyer earn large amounts of profit, it would also help Su Yi realize his initial plan. Su Yi took a towel and carefully wiped the surfaces of the 6 machines. This work took a lot of time, but Su Yi wasn't assured in giving it to the servants who didn't understand these machines, so he could only do it himself. After spending half an hour, he finally finished wiping the surfaces of the 6 machines. Then he took out several magic crystals and placed them in the 6 machines before turning on the switches to test them. When he turned on the switch of the first small magic harvester, the rake in front of it began to turn, and there was the sound of footsteps that came from outside the room. Chairman Su, Chairman Su. Manager Ram's loud shouts came through the window. Su Yi turned off the small magic harvester and walked out in a confused manner. As soon as he walked out of the room, he saw Supervisor Lam leading 4 people over. The 4 of them were wearing well-made uniforms, looking like they came from the same organization. As expected, after Manager Ram introduced them, Su Yi learned that the 4 of them were officials from the Agriculture Department. After knowing that Su Yi was in Anvilmar City yesterday, they came to see Su Yi early in the morning. The leading Agriculture Department official was a middle-aged man with a bit of white hair who looked to be at least 50 years old. After hearing Manager Ram's introduction, he gave a slight nod and said, "Chairman Su, what agricultural magic machines did you bring? Give them to us to bring back." Su Yi knit his brows. This Lord Fisher's tone sounded very calm, but whether it was his expression or his tone, there was a trace of disdain and indifference that couldn't be hidden at all. It was like them coming to see Su Yi was already giving Su Yi a lot of face, and it was natural for Su Yi to hand the things over. Su Yi thought that since the Agriculture Department officials had received the news the night before and came to see him the next morning, they must have placed great importance on the agricultural magic machines he brought. But looking at it now, it wasn't like this at all. "Lord Fisher, I don't think I said that I would hand the things over to the Agriculture Department, right?" Su Yi said with a frown. "If you don't hand them over, could it be that you want to keep them?" Lord Fisher slightly raised his voice as he looked at Su Yi, seeming a bit impatient. "Chairman Su, since you've already reported that you've brought those agricultural magic machines over, of course you have to hand them over to us and let us take them back to study. If they really help improve the farmland, the Agriculture Department will definitely give your new flyer a commendation." A commendation? Su Yi was instantly filled with anger. He had come this time to promote the agricultural magic machines. He thought that since the king had summoned him, the Agriculture Department would place great importance on him, but he never thought that the 4 Agriculture Department officials would be this indifferent, not caring about him at all. Based on their attitude, if Su Yi really gave the agricultural magic machines to them to bring back, perhaps they would immediately put them on the shelf and no longer care about them. "Your Excellency, please forgive me for asking. I remember that the agriculture department said in my letter that they wanted me to come this time to listen to the farmland transformation plan and the farmer support plan for a new flyer. They didn't say that they wanted me to hand over the magic machines, right? Other than that, I never said that I would bring the agricultural magic machines. So how did you know about this? Sue, he looked at Lord Fisher as he asked this. Lord Fisher's eyes sparkled a bit before he looked at Sue E. and raised his voice to say, Chairman Sue, this isn't something you should ask. You don't need to care that much right now. I represent the Agriculture Department to ask you to immediately hand over the agricultural magic machines for us to study. Could it be that you don't agree? Sue E. looked over the 3 Agriculture Department officials beside Lord Fisher and found that they also had fierce looks. It was like if Sue E. dared not agree, they would immediately charge forward to make a move. Seeing the appearance of the 4 of them, Sue E. fell into thought. He wasn't afraid. He just felt that there was something strange about this. If the Agriculture Department didn't care about him, they wouldn't have come this early. If they did care about him, why would they have this kind of attitude? Thinking about it, Sue E. shook his head. Your Excellency, I'm afraid I can't agree to your request. I have other uses for these machines, and if I give them to you, it will disrupt my plans. Lord Fisher's face sunk, and he said with a cold snort, Disrupt your plans? If you don't give those machines to us, it will disrupt our Agriculture Department's plans. Do you think that your plans are more important, or our Agriculture Department's plans are more important? Sue E. revealed a faint smile. Your Excellency, there isn't anything to compare, right? Perhaps the Agriculture Department's plans are more important, but that doesn't mean that I have to give those machines to you. How dare you? Lord Fisher suddenly flew into a rage. He pointed a finger at Sue Ye's nose and shouted, Sue E., you're just a small merchant. How dare you go against our Agriculture Department's orders? Do you know that if it weren't for your Chamber of Commerce's farmer support plan, you wouldn't even have the right to talk to me? Sue E. frowned. He grabbed Lord Fisher's finger and pressed it down. He maintained a calm tone as he said, Your Excellency, if you continue to maintain this attitude, I think this is the end of our conversation. Sue Ye's calm tone immediately angered the other 3 officials from the Agriculture Department. This angered Lord Fisher even more. However, he was older and more mature. He raised his hand to stop his 3 companions from rushing over. He looked at Sue E. and said seriously, Chairman Sue, are you really going to disobey the orders of the Agriculture Department? Sue E. smiled and said, Your Excellency, first of all, our new flyer and the Agriculture Department aren't in a superior and subordinate relationship. The word orders doesn't seem to be used here, does it? Secondly, can you really represent the Agriculture Department? Chapter 98. Seeing Lord Fisher angrily leave with his 3 companions, Manager Ram came to Sue Ye's side and said in a worried voice, Chairman Sue, is it good for you to treat the officials of the Agriculture Department like this? Didn't Sir Count say that he hoped that you would cooperate with the Agriculture Department and spread the things you did in Banna City? Sue E. pointed in the direction the 4 of them left in. Do you think that they have the attitude of cooperating? Manager Ram was speechless. Lord Fisher's group of 4 had acted high and mighty, completely treating Sue E. as a subordinate. They even ordered Sue E. to hand over the agricultural magic machines, which didn't seem like they were cooperating at all. It had to be known that even Samo Count had praised Sue E. very much in his letter, speaking in a very polite tone. It could be seen that Chairman Sue wasn't a normal citizen. Adding in the fact that Viscount Leslie was close to him, it was very normal for Sue E. to not put 4 trivial Agriculture Department officials in his eyes. Manager Ram, how are you certain that the 4 of them are officials of the Agriculture Department? Sue E. suddenly asked. Manager Ram was stunned before reacting. Sue E. was even beginning to doubt the identities of the 4 of them. He quickly replied, Their uniforms are the uniforms of the Agriculture Department, and they even have the badges of the Agriculture Department. In Anvilmar City, there hasn't been anyone bold enough to pretend to be an official. Sui nodded and didn't ask anything else. He returned to the room to continue inspecting the 6 machines. The results were quite good. After all, these 6 machines were made of iron and Sue had strictly controlled the quality when they were made, adding in the exquisite craftsmanship of the dwarves. These 6 machines were very sturdy and hard to break. Other than the magic array inside the small magic excavator that couldn't be activated, the other 5 were completely fine. Sue didn't have any suitable materials on hand to repair it, and the courtyard naturally didn't have any spare materials. Thus, Sue informed Supervisor Ram and left the courtyard, walking into the streets of Anvil City. Compared to yesterday, there were more magicians wearing magic robes on the streets today. No matter which direction one looked, there would be 2s and 3s, or even more magicians coming into view. If they had only been in this world for the past 2 days, they would definitely have the illusion that everyone in this world was a magician. Sue had only found a magic material shop to purchase some materials for setting up magic arrays. Yet he had to line up for more than half an hour before he managed to purchase them. Just as he was about to leave the commercial street that specialized in selling magic-related items, a person suddenly staggered out of a small shop in front of him. I've already said it. No one likes your broken thing. You're not allowed to come back in the future. A young man who looked like a waiter came out of the shop and roared at that person. He even kicked his butt before returning to the shop. Seeing that person dragging himself away, Sue suddenly felt that he was a bit familiar. After thinking for a while, Sue finally remembered. This person was the fellow he had saved when he arrived in Anvil City yesterday. Seeing him limp out of the commercial street, Suyi's heart skipped a beat, and he followed him. After that person left the commercial street, he turned into an alley and found a secluded corner. He didn't care about the cold stone floor and sat down. Then he took out a black thing that seemed like bread from his chest and slowly chewed on it. He was clearly very hungry, but he ate very slowly. After taking a bite of the black bread, he chewed it in his mouth for a long time before swallowing. It was as if this piece of black bread that no one would care about, even if it was thrown on the ground, was also a delicious meal that was hard to enjoy. Sui watched for not far away. After thinking for a bit, he left the alley and bought a few things before walking in front of him. Hey, you'll be thirsty if you only eat bread. Drink some milk. Sue squatted down in front of that person and handed over a bottle of hot milk that he had just bought from a small shop on the street. That person paused for a moment and raised his head to look at Sue. Sue immediately revealed a kind smile. That person looked at the hot milk in Suyi's hand, and his eyes revealed a look of desire. Sue brought the hot milk in front of him, but after a gulping sound, he lowered his head again and didn't take the hot milk. Sue was a little surprised. This person's clothes were ragged, and his hair was dirty like a chicken's nest. It looked like he hadn't eaten for many days. No matter how you looked at him, he was no different from a beggar. Sue didn't expect him to refuse his charity. After thinking for a moment, Sue smiled and said, "Hey, brother, this isn't charity. I'm a merchant and want to do business with you. This cup of hot milk is just a greeting gift." That person raised his head again, a puzzled look on his dirty face. Sue pointed at his chest and said, "I saw you come out of that shop just now. For what the shop assistant said, you should want to sell this thing in your arms to that shop, right?" "Oh, right. Besides being a merchant, I'm also a magician. I can feel that the magic array attached to that thing in your arms is very strange. I'm very interested in it. Can you show it to me? If I'm satisfied with it, I can buy it." That person hesitated for a moment, then suddenly reached out and took the hot milk in Suyi's hand and drank it in one gulp. The temperature of this cup of hot milk was quite high. He immediately burned himself quite badly. Sue patiently waited for him to recover, then handed over the food he had prepared in his other hand. That person didn't refuse this time. He took the food and wolfed it down. After drinking the hot milk until there wasn't a drop left and swallowing the food, the person let out a long sigh. Then he looked at Sue and finally said, "You want to buy it?" Perhaps it was because he didn't have many opportunities to talk to people, but although it was only 3 words, it was very difficult for him to say. Sue shook his head and said, "I'm not sure if I'll buy it or not. I'm a merchant. Before seeing the real thing, I won't make a decision easily. Of course, if my intuition isn't wrong, I should buy it." That person nodded. He reached into his chest and took out a round crystal ball and handed it over. He took the crystal ball and carefully looked at it. He found that this crystal ball didn't look any different from Child's toy. But after using magic to examine it, he knew that there was a wind magic array attached to the base of the crystal ball. Can I try it? He pointed at the base of the crystal ball and asked. That person nodded and looked at He curiously. He seemed to want to see what he was going to do. He concentrated his mind, and a trace of magic entered the base of the crystal ball from his palm. The magic array attached to the base of the crystal ball was instantly activated. A breeze blew out from the base of the crystal ball, which was used to represent the snowflakes in the crystal ball. Suddenly, the crystal ball seemed to be filled with flying snow. At first, there was nothing strange. The base of the crystal ball was constantly blowing out a steady breeze through the wind magic array. It was no different from an ordinary magic array. But after a while, the wind blowing from the base of the crystal ball suddenly changed. It went from blowing upwards to blowing diagonally upwards. The debris that had been blown into the air suddenly danced in the Shinfei because of the change in wind direction. They danced wildly in the crystal ball, causing the originally stable scene in the crystal ball to turn into a scene of a blizzard. After a while, the magic array on the base of the crystal ball suddenly stopped blowing out the breeze. The floating debris naturally fell back down. When the debris had completely fallen, the magic array on the base of the crystal ball was activated again. This time, it only spurted out a stream of air from different places on the base of the crystal ball like a fountain. It didn't blow continuously. Thus, the debris that covered the base of the crystal ball suddenly exploded upward with each spurt of air and then fell back down. The frequency of the spurts on the base of the crystal ball was sometimes fast and sometimes slow. Sometimes only one spurt of air spurted out. Sometimes the entire base of the crystal ball spurted out. The debris in the crystal ball flew all over the sky. It was a beautiful and spectacular sight. This process lasted for about 2 minutes. The base of the crystal ball returned to its original state of blowing a breeze upwards. He withdrew his magic, and the crystal ball returned to normal. This process will be repeated in the future, right? He raised the crystal ball as he asked that person this question. That person's expression was a bit surprised. He nodded and asked back, "You can see through it?" He revealed a smile. He looked back at the crystal ball in his hand, and his eyes gradually began to burn. This crystal ball didn't seem that strange, but he was very clear that the wind-attributed magic array on the base of the crystal ball was enough to create a revolution. Before this, whether it was the magic arrays that he had learned or touched, they had all been determined when a magic array was placed. Moreover, the effect was all single and wouldn't change at all. For example, the revolving wind array used by the magic fan. When it was placed at the base of the magic fan, it was determined how strong the wind was. Then it was used to move the fan blades, and the speed of the fan blades was fixed, as was the wind that blew out. As for the second-generation variable speed magic fan, there were actually 3 different revolving wind arrays placed at the base of the magic fan. When changing the speed of the magic fan, it was just changing the revolving wind arrays. However, the wind-attributed magic array at the base of the crystal ball in Suyi's hand, when Yi kept pouring the same amount of magic into it, there were different kinds of changes. Not only did the wind speed change, there were also changes in the direction of the wind. There were even changes in the vent, changes in the frequency, and etc. If one had to describe it, the wind-attributed magic array on the crystal ball even had a trace of programming to it. Chapter 99. When the word programming appeared in his mind, Suyi's eyes, looking at the crystal ball, became even more passionate. This fellow, who looked like a beggar, clearly didn't know how high the value of the magic array he designed was. But he was very clear that if his guesses were true, this fellow really could program the magic array ahead of time, allowing the magic array to change during operation. This could change the entire magic machine industry, greatly closing the gap between signs and earth. The magic array on this was laid by you? He confirmed with that person. That person nodded as a trace of expectation appeared in his eyes. What do you think of this thing? He suppressed the excitement in his heart and gave a slight nod. It's not bad. But since you can lay magic arrays, you should be a magician. Why did you become like this? That person's eyes dimmed again, and he shook his head, but he didn't reply. Seeing that he didn't want to reply, Su-yi didn't force him. He raised the crystal ball and asked, if I had you lay down the magic array on this again, would you be able to do it? Of course there's no problem. That person heard a different meaning from Su-yi's words, and his voice couldn't help revealing a trace of excitement. All right, let me introduce myself again. I am Su-yi from Banda City, and am the chairman of a company in Banda City. I want to hire you to do some research on magic arrays for me, so your salary will be 10 gold coins a month. Are you willing? Su-yi looked at that person and said in an honest voice, 10 gold coins a month? That much? That person looked at Su-yi, not seeming to believe him. You're this young. Are you really the chairman of a company? You wouldn't be lying to me, right? Su-yi said with a smile. What do you have that's worth me lying to you? If it's just to buy this crystal ball, I think 10 gold coins should be enough, right? That person fell silent and lowered his head to think for a bit before slowly nodding. All right, I'll agree. But I don't even have a single copper coin right now. That's not a problem. Since you're now an employee of our Chamber of Commerce, I'll help you with your basic living needs. Su-yi looked around and then said, looking at you, you don't have any relatives in Anvilmar City, right? How about you come with me now? I'll take care of your food and lodging. After I finish my matters here in a few days, you can come back to Banda City with me. That person nodded repeatedly. Now that he had nowhere to go and was about to starve to death, Su-yi suddenly appeared and offered to hire him and pay him 10 gold coins a month. Of course, he would not miss this opportunity. All right, let's go. Su-yi straightened up and pulled the man up. By the way, I still don't know your name. Santo. Sanchali. My name is Sanchali. Su-yi looked at him. This person's hesitant answer and even changing his name, perhaps this was a fake name. But he didn't care too much about this. Anyway, his goal in hiring this person was to learn how to set up the magic array ahead of time. So it didn't matter if he hid his identity or not. Su-yi wanted to lead him out of the alley and return to the yard to have him clean himself up, but there were several figures that suddenly appeared at the entrance of the alley. One of them pointed at Sanchali and shouted, "It's him, young master, isn't that right?" Su-yi looked up in a daze and saw 3 familiar figures. Victor, Sel, and Urgot. They were the 3 noble young masters who had blocked the horse carriage yesterday and beaten up Sanchali. After looking at Sanchali, Victor gave a cold laugh and said in a sharp voice, "It's this fellow. He actually dared to make this young master lose so much face in front of a group of people. If I don't teach him a lesson, this young master won't be able to take this lying down. Sel, Urgot, you 2 watch from the side. Wait for me to vent my anger before you 2 go." Sel and Urgot on the side couldn't help complaining, "Hey, Victor, don't beat him to death. We also want to vent our anger." Victor spat out and rubbed his hands together. He said with a cold laugh, "Don't worry. How could I let him die so easily? If I don't torture him, how could I vent my anger? Hey, that dumb bird over there, what are you standing there in a daze for? Why aren't you scramming? Do you want this young master to beat you up as well?" The last sentence was directed at Su-yi. Su-yi knit his brows. He didn't think that such an accident would appear after finding such a pleasant surprise. He turned to look at Sanchali and found that his body was slightly trembling. It was clear that he was afraid. Su-yi couldn't help feeling angry and amused at the same time. This Sanchali had been beaten up so badly by Victor and the other 2 yesterday, but he didn't show any signs of fear. Now that he hadn't even been beaten up, he was already this scared. The contrast was too great. Moreover, he was a magician. Why would he be afraid of these 3 noble young masters who didn't have any good points besides being young and strong? Su-yi turned to look at Victor and stepped in front of Sanchali. Seeing Su-yi's actions, Victor paused for a moment before flying into a rage. "What? This young master is teaching a beggar a lesson and you want to stick your nose in? Are you tired of living?" Su-yi revealed a smile and gave Victor a bow. "Young Master Victor, this person is my friend. I ask you to give me some face and let him go, all right?" Victor paused. "You know me." He then said angrily, "Who do you think you are? Why should I give you face?" Sui pondered for a moment, then raised his hands and slowly approached Victor. When he was less than 2 meters away from Victor, he saw Victor's footsteps move. Sui knew that he couldn't go any closer, so he stopped and said in a low voice, "Young Master Victor, yesterday I was in the same carriage as Viscount Leslie." Although Victor was a bit arrogant, he wasn't stupid. After being stunned for a moment, he immediately understood what Sui meant. He looked at Sui and then at Sanchely, who was behind Sui. He said with a calm face, "You are Big Brother Leslie's friend, so I can give you some face and let you stand in front of me. But this guy made us 3 brothers lose face in front of everyone, so we can't let him go. Get out of the way." Sui showed an awkward expression. Then he moved closer to Victor and said in a low voice, "Young Master Victor, to be honest, he is now an employee of our company. As his boss, I can't just stand by and watch him get beaten up. That would be too disloyal, right? If you think he made you lose face, then I can ask him to apologize to you, and I can also compensate you for him. What do you think?" Employee? Boss? Victor looked at Sui in shock. His face was full of disbelief. "Hey, are you kidding me? This guy is just a beggar. When did he become your employee? What do you want him to do? Sweep the floor for you?" Sui smiled and didn't answer this question. Seeing that Victor's tone was a bit relaxed, he reached into his chest and took out a purse. Leaning to the side, he blocked everyone's line of sight and secretly handed it over to Victor. "This is a small gift, young Master Victor. Please accept it. If you're not satisfied, we can discuss it again. What do you think?" Victor hesitated for a moment and looked at the money pouch in Sui's hand. He clenched his teeth and reached out to take it. Carefully opening the pouch, he was stunned. The money pouch was overflowing with golden light. It was actually filled with gold coins. Although he couldn't see the exact number, but with a rough estimate, there were at least 50 gold coins in the pouch. Victor's breathing suddenly became rapid. Although he was a noble young master in Anvilmar City, there were many nobles in Anvilmar City, and young masters like him were as numerous as the hairs on a cow. Moreover, he didn't have the right to inherit the title of nobility in his family, so he wasn't valued in the younger generation. Usually, other than the monthly allowance of less than 20 gold coins, he didn't have any other income. Now that he suddenly saw such a big bag of gold coins, of course he was a little excited. Seeing his reaction, Sui couldn't help but find it funny. It seemed like the lives of the noble young masters in Anvilmar City weren't that good. If it was the officials in the capital back on Earth, not to mention this small amount of money, even if it was 10 times more, they wouldn't care about it. "Young Master Victor, this is just a small gift. Of course it can't be used as compensation. Why don't we find a place to sit down and have a good talk?" Sui suggested. Victor rolled his eyes and coughed lightly. Without leaving a trace, he put the money pouch into his clothes and pointed at Sanchely, who was behind Sui. "Consider yourself lucky, young master today saw this person." Sui quickly said, "My name is Sui, the president of New Flyer." Victor nodded and continued, "Seeing this Chairman Sui's face, I'll let you go. But it's best if you don't appear in front of this young master in the future. Otherwise, even Chairman Sui won't be able to protect you. Do you understand?" Hearing Victor's words, not only was Sanchely confused, Sel and Urget were also confused. Didn't they say that since they finally found the beggar that embarrassed them, they would beat him up to vent their anger? Why did Victor suddenly change his mind? Victor was too lazy to explain as he patted Sui's shoulder and loudly said, "Chairman Sui, since you're Big Brother Leslie's friend, then you're our friend. If you meet any trouble in Anvilmar City in the future, just give us brothers' names. No matter what. I don't dare say big trouble, but small trouble definitely won't be a problem. We promise to help you solve it." Sel and Urget revealed looks of understanding at the same time. So this fellow called Sui, who came out of nowhere, was actually Viscount Leslie's friend. No wonder Victor suddenly changed his mind after giving him face. Sui revealed a faint smile. "Young Master Victor is too polite. I haven't met any trouble yet, but I'm looking for someone to do some business with. I wonder if young Master Victor is interested?" Chapter 100. 2 hours later, Su-yi brought Sanchili back to the office. Manager Ram saw Sanchili following behind Su-yi like a beggar, so he couldn't help feeling doubtful. However, he was well versed in the ways of the world, so he naturally didn't ask too much. He followed Su-yi's arrangements and had a servant take Sanchili to shower and change clothes. He came to Su-yi's side and said with a serious expression, "Chairman Su, the King's Guard just sent someone to inform you that the King will summon you at 5 in the afternoon the day after tomorrow. It's best if you arrange the time and wait here in advance. Someone will come to take you to the palace then." The afternoon of the day after tomorrow? That's quite fast. Su-yi nodded. I thought that His Majesty the King would be so busy that he would at least leave me for a few days before summoning me. Manager Ram immediately said with a smile, "Chairman Su, you're looking down on yourself too much. The person who came to inform you is the King's clerk. Sending him to inform you means that the King values this summon very much. I also asked the clerk, and he said that since the King has arranged for you to be summoned at 5 in the afternoon, then it's very likely that he will ask you to stay for dinner. This is a rare honor, so you have to be mentally prepared." "Oh, the King values me that much? That really makes me feel flattered." Su-yi laughed before frowning. "Since it's like this, what's going on with the Agriculture Department? The King values me so much, but the Agriculture Department is treating me so lightly. Isn't this a bit strange?" "This..." Manager Ram looked around before suddenly moving to Su-yi's ear and saying in a very low voice, "Chairman Su, the current director of the Agriculture Department is C-Tech Marquis. He and Viscount Leslie's father, Duke Stagg, have always had political differences, although it was just a simple reminder." Su-yi immediately understood the meaning behind Manager Ram's words. However, even though he understood, Su-yi couldn't help but smile bitterly. He just wanted to properly study magic machines and keep promoting them, improving people's lives. Now that he hadn't done anything, he was already involved in the struggle of these important people, which really wasn't what he wanted. However, this was something that Su-yi had already expected. Not to mention this world where the aristocrats still held absolute power, even on Earth, which claimed to have achieved democracy and equality. It was impossible for businessmen to completely avoid politics. Not to mention, in the most powerful countries on Earth, politics was simply to serve those big businessmen. If that's the case, doesn't that mean I won't be supported by the Agriculture Department? Su-yi frowned. Although as long as he had the support of the king, Su-yi's plan to promote the agricultural magic machines could be implemented. The one who would do this would still be the Agriculture Department of the kingdom. If the Agriculture Department obstructed Su-yi's plan for political reasons, it would be much more troublesome. Chairman Su, you don't need to worry about this. The Agriculture Department is the most important department in the kingdom. It isn't just decided by C-Tech Marquis alone. Manager Ram comforted him. Su-yi thought about it before giving a shrug. I hope it's like this. When he was about to talk to Manager Ram about something, a servant suddenly ran in. Sir Manager, there are 2 officials from the Agriculture Department who want to see Chairman Su. Manager Ram and Su-yi were both stunned. Didn't the officials from the Agriculture Department already come? Why did these 2 suddenly appear? 5 minutes later, Su-yi saw the 2 officials from the Agriculture Department in the living room. The 2 of them were wearing the same uniform as the 4 officials from the Agriculture Department from before, but the badge on their chests was a bit different. The 2 officials, one male and one female, appear to be extremely young. The male looked to be in his 30s, while the female looked to be in her early 20s. They were far from the old man, Lord Fisher, who was over 50 years old. They were different from Lord Fisher's aloof attitude. These 2 were very gentle. When they saw Su-yi, the male official took the initiative to reach his hand out to Su-yi with a smile. Su-yi, Chairman Su, right? I am Harvey. I've already heard of your name. Now that I've finally met you, it really makes me very excited. Su-yi reached out to shake his hand in a confused manner. You know me? Harvey laughed. Of course. As for your new Flyers Farmer Support Plan, I've deeply researched it. It has to be said, Chairman Su's plan really is a stroke of genius. Not only can it help the normal farmers, It can also popularize the agricultural magic machines produced by your company in Banta City, so it will greatly increase the use of farmland in Banta City. According to Count Samo's description, if nothing unexpected happens, Banta City's harvest next year will greatly increase. As an official from the Agriculture Department, I am very happy about this. If we can spread Banta City's experience throughout the kingdom, it will greatly increase the kingdom's grain income. That would solve a large problem for our Lampari kingdom. Therefore, our Agriculture Department has placed great importance on Chairman Su and your new flyer. So we immediately sent the report to His Majesty. His Majesty also places great importance on this, so he decided to summon you. Su-yi looked at him with a bit of surprise. You're saying that your Agriculture Department places great importance on this? Why can't I see it? Harvey was a bit surprised. He could smell something strange from Su-yi's words. Why do you say this? Su-yi looked at Manager Ram on the side and paused before continuing. Before you, which was this morning, there were 4 officials from the Agriculture Department that came. Their attitudes towards me weren't friendly at all, as they had me hand over the 6 agricultural magic machines I brought this time. There were officials from the Agriculture Department that came? Harvey was surprised. He turned to look at the female official who had been silent the entire time before turning to Su-yi to ask in a serious voice. Chairman Su, who was the leader? He called himself Lord Fisher. Su-yi said, Lord Fisher? Harvey gave a slight nod, but he didn't say anything else. After pausing for a bit, he said with a serious look, Chairman Su, I think I need to explain something to you. Our Agriculture Department is in charge of many things, so the contact with you and the new flyer this time, as well as the possible cooperation in the future, is being handled by our Agriculture Department's Agricultural Reform Committee. Right now, this committee only consists of me and her. Harvey pointed at the female official beside him. Lord Fisher is indeed an official from the Agriculture Department, but he isn't in charge of this, so you don't need to care. Su-yi knit his brows. Only the 2 of you are in charge? Then how should I believe you? Harvey thought about it before revealing a bitter smile. This is our lack of consideration. But Chairman Su, I think that after you meet His Majesty, you'll know the answer. Su-yi spread his hands. All right, after I meet His Majesty, I'll discuss this with your Agriculture Department. Right now, I already don't know who to believe. This, Chairman Su, actually before you meet His Majesty, we want to observe the operation of the 6 agricultural magic machines you brought and summarize a report for His Majesty. So we hope that you can cooperate with us and bring the 6 magic machines out of the city with us to perform a demonstration. Harvey said, Why should I believe you? Su-yi looked at Harvey. What if you're the same as that Lord Fisher and just want to confiscate my machines? Harvey didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chairman Su, don't. If the Agriculture Department really wants you to hand over the 6 magic machines, will you hand them over? The female official who had been silent the entire time suddenly spoke up to cut off Harvey's words. When she spoke, Harvey immediately closed his mouth. Seeing the situation, Su-yi immediately understood. It seemed like Harvey was in charge, but the one in control was this younger female official. Actually, calling her an official was a bit old, but she looked like she was in her early 20s. Even if she didn't give off a stunning feeling like steel, her facial features were very gentle and her proportions were close to perfect. If one looked closely, they couldn't help feeling a sense of familiarity with her. But her aura was filled with strong confidence and nobility. It was clear that her background wasn't normal and she had received a good education since she was young. This kind of outstanding girl, even a normal noble family wouldn't be able to raise her. At the very least, she should come from a large noble family. It was no wonder Harvey said that this Agricultural Reform Committee was only made up of him and this girl. Harvey didn't seem simple, but this girl's background was even stronger. The backing behind her might be the king himself, which was why they didn't spare a glance at Lord Fisher. If the Agriculture Department has a good reason, like wanting to study how these 6 machines work and how they can increase the efficiency of agriculture, I can choose to hand them over. But if they want me to hand them over without any reason like Lord Fisher, then please forgive me for not being willing to comply. Su-yi honestly replied, The girl gave a slight nod. Of course, you don't need to comply with such an unreasonable request. But Chairman Su, right now we hope that you can use the 6 magic machines to give us a demonstration, so that we can observe the operation of the magic machines. This will make it easier for His Majesty to understand the uses of the magic machines. So I think you won't reject this, right? I think that since you've already brought these magic machines from Bana City, of course you don't want them to stay in the warehouse and not be able to display their true uses. Su-yi looked at the girl and thought, but the other side didn't look away at all. She looked right at Su-yi with clear eyes, not looking guilty at all. Your eyes really are beautiful. Su-yi suddenly praised her with a smile before suddenly standing up. All right, I choose to believe you. But I need to remind you first, don't be scared by their powerful abilities. Chapter 101. The next morning, Viscount Leslie walked into the office's living room, and when he saw the scene in front of him, he almost didn't dare believe his eyes. Other than Su-yi, there were actually 3 people that Viscount Leslie couldn't understand why would appear here: Victor, Sel, and Urgot. What surprised Viscount Leslie even more was that the 3 of them were happily chatting with Su-yi, acting like old friends. When Viscount Leslie came in, Victor was speaking very eloquently, gesturing as he said something to Su. 30 gold coins? Chairman Su, do you think that our Anvilmar city is a small place like your Bana city? Oh, I'm not looking down on you. Don't take offense. My meaning is that if it's only 30 gold coins per unit, aren't you looking down on the rich people of our Anvilmar city? Let me tell you, as long as this magic air conditioner is as good as you say, not to mention 30 gold coins, even if it was doubled, there would still be a bunch of people buying it. Then again, for people of high society like us, what is the most important thing? Money? Of course not. Face is the most important thing. Think about it. Even the nobles of small place like Bana City are using a novel thing like the magic air conditioner. How could our Anvilmar city not have one? That would be too much of a loss of face. So Chairman Su, you can't go wrong if you listen to me. Let's not talk about directly doubling the price. Going from 30 gold coins to 50 gold coins per unit isn't a problem at all. After saying this, Victor forcefully patted his chest. I promise that with this price, it won't be a problem to sell several hundred units in Anvilmar City. Su-yi knit his brows. Only several hundred units? Young Master Victor, forgive me for being rude, but I want to say that your heart is a bit too small. My goal is to sell several thousand units in Anvilmar City, even over 10,000 units. Victor's mouth opened wide as he looked at Sel and Urgot in a daze. Several thousand units? This. Chairman Su, although there are many rich people in Anvilmar City, a few dozen gold coins isn't a small amount. Those who can casually take it out don't have that much. Su-yi revealed a faint smile. Perhaps there isn't that much right now, but when the kingdom's economy develops, there will naturally be that much. Victor scratched his head in confusion. Chairman Su, I don't understand this economic development you're talking about. Let's not talk about the future. Based on the current situation, I think selling 1,000 units in Anvilmar City is already not bad. All right, since young Master Victor thinks we can sell 1,000 units, we'll set it according to that number. Su-yi said with a nod. Of course, it isn't realistic to provide 1,000 magic air conditioners at once. Our company can't produce that many right now. How about this? I'll get someone to send 50 units over first. Before sending them over, I'll have to trouble young Master Victor, young Master Sel, and young Master Urgot to advertise it. It would be best if we could sell them as soon as the first batch of magic air conditioners are sent over. This could be considered advertising ahead of time and seeing how the market is. What do you think? Victor's group of 3 revealed smiles, but then Victor revealed an awkward smile as he said to Su, this. Chairman Su, according to the price you gave us of 25 gold coins per unit, 50 units would be 1,250 gold coins. This. Although us 3 brothers have some extra money and can ask our families for help, taking out this much at once, I'm afraid. Su-yi laughed and waved his hand as he generously said, the 3 young masters are looking down on me. Su-yi too much. It's just 1,250 gold coins with the identities of the three young masters. How could you need this money in advance? I'll make the decision. This money can be put in the account first. When the first batch of magic air conditioners are sold, the three young masters can pay me. I believe that with the skills of the three young masters, you will be able to open a market in Anvilmar City and quickly earn enough gold coins. Victor's group of threes' eyes lit up as they excitedly shouted, "Chairman Sue, is this true?" Sue revealed a displeased look. "Young Master Victor, if you don't believe me, we won't do this business." Victor quickly grabbed Su Yi's arm and said, I believe, of course I believe, Chairman Sue. All right, it's settled like this. Have someone send 5. No, give us a week to make some preparations. When everything is ready, have someone send over 50 magic air conditioners. Su Yi nodded with a faint smile. All right, I'll be in Anvilmar City for around a week. If you have any ideas during this time, you can come find me here. Victor's group of 3 looked at each other before smiling at the same time. After saying a few more things, Victor's group of 3 left with smiles on their faces. When they left, Viscount Leslie came out of his hiding place and came back into the hall. He looked over Su Yi like it was his first time meeting him. Su Yi, although I thought that you had strong communication skills, I never thought that in just a single day you would be with those 3 fellows. Moreover, based on your conversation, you're prepared to do business with them? Lord Viscount, when did you come? Su Yi looked at him in surprise before looking in the direction the 3 of them left in and saying with a smile, It was just a coincidence. What? Lord Viscount, you don't think it's good to cooperate with them? Viscount Leslie shook his head. Those 3 fellows have been idling around since they were young, not doing proper things. If you choose to cooperate with them, I'm worried that you'll lose everything. Su Yi revealed a relaxed smile. I can still take the loss of 50 magic air conditioners. Then again, this is an investment, and if it succeeds, the returns will be rich. As a merchant, if I don't even dare take this bit of risk, I might as well just study magic. Investment? Viscount Leslie looked at Su Yi with a doubtful look. You only met them the day before yesterday. You don't know them at all. So how can you be certain that they're worth your investment? Su Yi said to Viscount Leslie with a smile. Lord Viscount, for them to know you and be qualified to be taught a lesson by you, they shouldn't be from normal families, right? Viscount Leslie was instantly happy. Are you trying to flatter me? All right, your guess is right. Although those 3 brats aren't worth anything, the families behind them have some influence in Anvilmar City, so you found the right people to cooperate with. Those 3 fellows can be considered local tyrants. They know many people and have many connections. They might not be able to do other things, but it shouldn't be a problem for them to help you sell the magic air conditioner and open up a market. Of course, that is on the premise that they're willing to do it seriously. Su Yi laughed. Every magic air conditioner they sell, they earn 5 gold coins. Do you think they're willing to work hard? Viscount Leslie couldn't help laughing. Those 3 fellows are strictly controlled by their families, so they're usually very nervous. If there's money to be earned, they're definitely willing to do it. But Su Yi, I have to remind you that other companies have looked for them before, but they were all ruined by them. Even if they work hard, they might not do well. Su Yi shook his head. I've said it before, this is an investment, so of course there are risks. Actually, it doesn't matter if they ruin it, as long as they can let the people of Anvilmar City know about the magic air conditioner. Viscount Leslie gave a slight nod. That's right. In the end, the things you've made are all unique things in the signs market. Just based on this novelty, there will be many people willing to give it a try, so there's no need to worry about not being able to sell it. Su Yi revealed a proud smile before changing the topic and asking, Right, Lord Viscount, why did you come so early in the morning? Do you have something to talk to me about? No, it's nothing special. It's just that you're going to the Sorcerer's Guild certification exam today. So, as a friend, I should send you off. Su Yi looked at him with a bit of surprise. Even if he was very close to Viscount Leslie, there was a large difference in status between them, so they couldn't be considered friends at all. Moreover, when he was in Banna City, Viscount Leslie's relationship with him had always been indifferent. So why did he suddenly become so friendly now? Lord Viscount, you're too polite, Su Yi said with a smile. It's just a certification exam. It isn't anything important, so there's no need for you to come and send me off. You're quite confident." Viscount Leslie shook his head. Viscount Leslie shook his head. "Sue, let me ask you a question, and I hope you can honestly answer." "Lord Viscount, please ask. With your current magic level, what grade do you think you can pass?" Sue slightly knit his brows and looked at Viscount Leslie with a bit of confusion. Viscount Leslie really was strange today. He actually came to ask about his real magic level. "If nothing unexpected happens, I should be able to pass the 4th grade magician exam. If I'm a bit lucky, I might be able to pass the 5th grade." Sue thought about it before replying. "Oh." Viscount Leslie was a bit surprised. Viscount Leslie was a bit surprised. "This means that your strength is already close to that of a 5th grade magician, right?" Sue gave a slight nod. "All right, Sue, I have a small request that I hope you can agree to." Viscount Leslie thought for a bit before saying, "After passing the primary grade exam, I want you to directly take the 5th grade exam." "Directly take the 5th grade exam?" Sue looked at Viscount Leslie in surprise. "Lord Viscount, I just said that I could pass the 5th grade exam if I was lucky. I didn't say that I would definitely pass. The Sorcerer's Guild's exam only happens once a year, so if I can't pass the 5th grade exam, I'll only be assessed as a primary grade magician. Anyway, you don't care about this at all, right?" Viscount Leslie said. Sue couldn't help knitting his brows. "Lord Viscount, why do you want me to do this? Although it doesn't matter to me what grade I am, I used Great Magician Camilla's special recommendation this time, so I don't want to disappoint his expectations." Viscount Leslie was silent for a bit before giving a sigh. He waved his hand. "All right, just treat it as if I didn't say anything and forget about it." Sue saw the expression on Viscount Leslie's face, and his heart was filled with confusion. This Lord Viscount, what was wrong with him today? Chapter 102. Although the Sorcerer's Guild was located in Anvilmar City, because of the large number of people who signed up, the examination was held in a specially opened enclosure outside the city. Sue used his registration badge to enter the enclosure. Along the way, he met many people who took the initiative to greet him. On the day of the registration, in order to recruit some magi to work in the new flyer, Sue talked to almost every magus he saw. Although there were few people who agreed, Sue Yi's attitude when talking was very good, leaving a very good impression on these people. It also made these people naturally greet him when they saw him again. "Hey, Sue I didn't know you were so popular." Seeing Sue squeeze over, Erwin punched him on the shoulder and laughed. Sue shrugged. "Can't help it. I'm handsome." Erwin laughed. "Come on, you old bachelor. You still have the face to say you're handsome?" If Roy and the others heard this, they would laugh themselves to death. Sue helplessly rolled his eyes. When he was in the Sunkaiser Academy, Sue was already 24 years old when he transmigrated. He was much older than his classmates and was busy trying to fit in with this world. He didn't have time to interact with girls, so they always called him an old bachelor. Sue couldn't refute this and could only let them be. "Where are Rooney and Bob?" Sue looked around and asked. "They didn't have to participate in the primary examination like us." "Of course they didn't come," Erwin replied. "Oh." Sue just remembered that the Sorcerer's Guild's examination was arranged according to rank. The first day was for the primary examination, so there were no restrictions. The second day was for the primary examination. If you passed, you would be assessed as a second-rank magus. The third day was for the second-rank magus, and so on. The last day was for the 4th rank magus, which was the 5th rank examination. "All right, let's hurry up and finish this beginner's test. Don't you think it's embarrassing for the two of us to just stand here?" Erwin said. "Lose face." Sue was stunned for a moment before he reacted. If it was a magician with outstanding magical talent, as long as they received magic education from a young age, they would be able to pass the preliminary examination and become an official magician at the age of 10. For someone like Erwin who hadn't passed the preliminary exam at the age of 19, he couldn't be considered talented at all. And for someone like Sue who was already 27 years old and still hadn't passed the primary exam, they would be even more certain that his talent for magic was low, and that he would never be able to become a powerful great magician in this lifetime. It was no wonder that Erwin felt embarrassed standing in the middle of a group of teenagers taking part in the same level of assessment. Fortunately, the two of them were not the only ones who were embarrassed. Apart from them, there were also many ordinary magicians over the age of 20 in the examination hall. There was even an old man with a white beard who looked like he was over 60. Seeing that the old man was still wearing a black magic robe, Su-yi couldn't help but feel deep respect for him. To insist on taking part in the preliminary exam at such an age, this old man must have a true love for magic. Soon, the staff of the Sorcerers Guild in charge of order announced the start of the exam. Because it was a preliminary exam, in addition to testing the magician's magical strength, it also tested the magician's basic knowledge and experience of magic. Therefore, apart from the actual combat exam, the first exam was a written one. Su-yi took the test paper and couldn't help but laugh. The content of the test paper had already been studied in the Senkaiser Academy, but the questions were a little more profound. Since Erwin was able to graduate from the Senkaiser Academy, passing the written exam would be no problem at all. The reason why he didn't pass the preliminary exam before was obviously because he failed the actual combat exam. No wonder he chose to go on an adventure after graduation, because the adventure could greatly increase his actual combat experience, so it would be much easier for him to take the actual combat exam. No wonder he was so confident this time. After all, he was the one with the lowest magical talent in his dormitory. If the questions on the test paper posed no difficulty for Erwin, then naturally it wouldn't be difficult for Su-yi, who was known as a genius in the Senkaiser Academy. In less than half an hour, Su-yi finished answering all the questions on the test paper. With the caution of an engineer, Su-yi carefully checked the test paper twice. After confirming that there were no problems, he handed the test paper in advance. After leaving the exam room, he found that there was already someone waiting outside the exam room. Seeing Su-yi come out, this person's face revealed a trace of ridicule. "You actually took so long to finish the preliminary exam. You still dare to say that you have no special relationship with great magician Camilla?" Su-yi knit his brows as he looked at this youth who should still be underage. He revealed a thoughtful expression, and after thinking for a while, he clapped his hands and pointed at him as he shouted, "I remember now. You're the one I met at the registration that day. What was your name?" "Ain't Galen?" "Aaron." Aaron thought that anyone who saw him would never forget him, but he never thought that Su-yi would only remember him after thinking for a while. Moreover, he even remembered his name wrong, causing him to fly into a rage. "Su-yi, I'm telling you, you're dead today." Su-yi shook his head. He thought that this youth must have been spoiled by his family. He was too lazy to argue with this brat, so he found a place to sit down and patiently waited for the next exam. However, his attitude angered Aaron even more. He walked in front of Su-yi and pointed at Su-yi's nose as he loudly said, "Su-yi, did you hear what I said? You're dead today." Su-yi helplessly raised his head and weakly asked, "All right, why am I dead? Why?" Seeing that Su-yi was finally talking to him, Aaron looked up at the sky and loudly laughed. Then he said with a proud expression, "Because you provoked me. Let me tell you, since you dare look down on this genius, then this genius will not let you have an easy time. Don't you know that people with special recommendations don't need to participate in the written exam? But why do you still want to participate?" "Oh." Su-yi was really surprised. "Look at your appearance. Is this also your doing?" "Of course." As long as I say a word, not to mention canceling your special recommendation, even directly depriving you of the right to participate in the exam is easy. How is it? Are you afraid?" I'm really scared." Su-yi made a frightened expression. "Then may I ask, young Master Aaron, why did you show mercy and let me continue participating in the exam? Don't you understand? Because this genius wants to beat you to a pulp in the actual combat exam and let everyone know the consequences of insulting this genius," Aaron said sternly. Su-yi couldn't help but laugh. Although he had heard of this kind of brat before, because he had been spoiled since he was young, he felt that he could do whatever he wanted without any scruples, but this was the first time he had seen it. As it turned out, This brat was indeed very annoying. Aaron, I remember you said last time that you were a level 4 mage, right? Sui suddenly asked. Aaron chuckled and said proudly, "What? Scared? Don't worry. To deal with trash like you who didn't even pass the elementary exam, I don't need level 4 magic at all. I can easily deal with you with level 2 magic." "You really only use level 2 magic?" Sui asked again. Aaron raised his eyebrows. "This genius always keeps his word. Just you wait. When I meet you in the actual combat exam, I will definitely only use level 2 magic." Sui smiled and nodded, closing his eyes and ignoring Aaron. Aaron originally wanted to throw a few more harsh words, but seeing that Sui had even closed his eyes, it was clear that he didn't want to pay attention to him, so he could only leave in a huff. The written exam ended quickly, and those who left the examination hall were both happy and worried. It seemed that many people couldn't even pass these simple magic theory exams. However, Erwin was all smiles and looked relaxed. It was clear that he should have no problem passing the theory exam. After the written exam, there was a series of other tests, including magic power test, elemental magic control test, meditation test, and so on. Finally, and also the most important test, was the combat exam that everyone was looking forward to. In the minds of all magicians on the Signs continent, a magician's strength was tested through actual combat in the end, so the actual combat test was naturally the most important test. Of course, the combat exam wasn't a tournament. The magicians who participated in the exam wouldn't be allowed to fight each other. Instead, they would be allowed to practice with the high-ranked magicians sent by the Sorcerers Guild for a period of time, and then the high-ranked magicians would judge their actual performance. Generally speaking, the Sorcerers Guild would send out some older and more experienced magicians to be the judges. However, this time, everyone discovered that something unexpected had happened. In the group of magicians who were at least 40 years old, there were actually a few young magicians, and among them, there was even a youth who obviously hadn't reached adulthood yet. Seeing Aaron throw a proud look at him, Sui couldn't help but laugh. In order to deal with him, this guy was really willing to put in a lot of effort and actually used his connections to become an examiner. Furthermore, in order to keep it under wraps, he even thought of adding a few younger magicians to be in charge of the exam, so that he wouldn't be too conspicuous. Needless to say, when Sui started the exam, he would definitely be in charge of it. In the beginning, the magicians who participated in the exam couldn't help but suspect the young examiners because of their age, but after a few rounds of the exam, no one doubted them anymore. Although these examiners were young, their magic power was rather impressive. No matter how the examinees tried, they couldn't do anything to them at all. Among them, the examiner who looked like he hadn't reached adulthood had an even more shocking performance. Although he was very young, his every move was actually a level 3 or level 4 magic. These magic spells might not be much in the eyes of powerful magicians, but when it appeared in the hands of a youth who hadn't reached adulthood, it was extremely shocking. With this youth's current age and magic level, he could definitely be called a rare genius magician in the Lampari Kingdom. In the midst of everyone's sighs of admiration, it was soon Sui's turn to take the exam. As expected, the examiner in charge of him was Aaron. Seeing Sui walk up the stage, Aaron's smile became even more proud. He lowered his voice and said, "Sui, just you wait. No matter how you perform later, I will give you the lowest evaluation so that you won't be able to pass this exam. If you offend me, I will make it so that you won't even be able to become a beginner magician." Sui wasn't surprised at all. Instead, he smiled and said, "My dear young master Aaron, do you still remember the promise between us?" Aaron stared blankly for a moment before remembering. He coldly snorted and said, "TSK, a level 2 magic is a level 2 magic. With a trash like you, I only need to use a level 2 magic to make you flustered. I will definitely make you unable to display anything and lose face in front of everyone." Sui automatically ignored his words and nodded with a smile. "It's fine as long as you remember your promise." A moment later, Aaron indicated to Sui that the exam was about to begin. He casually waved his hand, and a light blue water shield appeared in front of him. Sue-Yi recognized that the water shield was a level 2 water magic, the water pattern technique. He thought that Aaron was a man of his word and couldn't help but smile. He raised his right hand and a fireball flew out. A mere level 1 fireball, and you still dare to take it out and embarrass yourself. Aaron's cold smile had just surfaced when he saw Sue-Yi's fireball suddenly accelerate. The originally fiery red fireball emitted strands of purple aura and even had traces of electricity twining around it. Aaron immediately turned pale with fright. It's actually a lightning split fireball. How can this be? Bang! The fireball suddenly collided with Aaron's water shield. The water shield only shook for a moment before it was blasted apart by the fireball. A huge impact exploded from the fireball. Alan only had time to let out a muffled groan before his entire body flew out of the platform. Chapter 103. The crowd was silent. Everyone looked at Sue-Yi in a daze, wondering if there was something wrong with their eyes. This fellow was clearly participating in the primary grade exam like them. So why was it that with a raise of his hand, he could send a genius examiner who was at least a 4th grade magician flying? Sue-Yi looked at Aaron, who wasn't moving under the stage, and gave a cold laugh. This kid's magic power wasn't bad, but his mental endurance and ability to resist attacks were too weak. Although this fireball of his was a 4th grade fire spell, thunder-splitting fireball, and its power was formidable, but since he had already propped up a 2nd grade water ripple spell as a defense, this fireball couldn't possibly cause much damage to him. However, this kid had actually fainted like this. He must have fainted from a shock. Magic genius? He shook his head. He turned to the arbitrator under the stage and asked, "Does this count as me passing?" The arbitrator had an ugly expression as he looked at Aaron, who had been lifted up by the staff of the Sorcerer's Guild, before looking at Sue-Yi. After calming himself down, he gave a slight nod. Sue-Yi had sent the examiner flying in front of all these people. So if this wasn't considered passing, what would be considered passing? Very good. Sue-Yi had obtained the result he wanted, so he wasn't prepared to waste any more time here. After coming off the stage, he patted the stunned Erwin and gave him a few words of encouragement before leaving the exam room. He didn't return to Anvilmar City, but rather went further out of the city. After walking for less than 5 kilometers, there was a flat field in front of him. When they were still far away, they could hear the endless rumbling of machinery coming from the field. When they came a bit closer, they could see that in this 5 to 6 move field, there were currently 3 magic machines working. The field was filled with holes and looked like it was in ruins. There were several people around each magic machine. They were following the magic machines while writing something down in their notebooks. There was a young man and a young woman standing by the field, pointing at the magic machines in the field as they discussed in a low voice. "Hey, Mr. Harvey, young Miss 70, you've already inspected it all day. Have you come to any conclusions?" Sue-Yi loudly called out to the 2 by the field. These 2 were the officials from the Agriculture Department who had come to Sue-Yi yesterday to ask Sue-Yi to show them how the agricultural magic machines worked. After Sue-Yi agreed yesterday, the 2 of them quickly found some people to take the 6 agricultural magic machines that Sue-Yi brought out of Anvilmar City and brought them to the experimental field they had prepared ahead of time. Since yesterday afternoon, the 2 of them had been inspecting these magic machines the entire time. They hadn't relaxed at all. It showed just what Harvey said to Sue-Yi, the importance of the agriculture departments. "Chairman Sue, good afternoon." Harvey waved his hand at Sue-Yi. His attitude was even more enthusiastic compared to yesterday, and there was a trace of excitement in his voice. "Although we haven't come to a conclusion yet, I'm certain that Chairman Sue is completely right. I was completely shocked by the might of these machines. Look." Harvey pointed at the large piece of farmland in front of him. "For such a large piece of land, I only used 3 people to operate 3 machines. In less than a day, I actually finished the work of loosening the soil, digging the ditches, and leaving the ridges. If this was purely done with manpower, to finish it in the same amount of time, it would take at least 20 adult laborers." The female official named 70 on the side also gave a slight nod. Chairman Su, I now understand why Count Samo placed so much importance on you in a new flyer. The abilities of these agricultural magic machines are indeed outstanding, being able to complete such heavy work with just 3 machines. If they could be popularized, we would be able to open up many barren lands in the kingdom and greatly increase the kingdom's grain yield. If this could be realized, perhaps there wouldn't be a famine in the kingdom in the future. After saying this, 70, who had always been calm in Su Yi's mind, was actually a bit excited. Su Yi gave a slight nod. This is the goal that New Flyer and I are pursuing. Mr. Harvey, young Miss 70, it's a good thing that His Majesty is wise and has given you 2 full responsibility for this matter. Otherwise, if it was given to someone like Lord Fisher, I doubt that this matter would have come to a premature end, and we wouldn't have been able to achieve the result that I wanted. Harvey revealed a faint smile. How could he not hear that Su Yi was giving them another warning? He said with a nod, Chairman Su, please be assured. Agriculture is the foundation of the kingdom, so anything that can increase the grain yield will receive His Majesty's close attention. This matter will be directly reported to His Majesty by the 2 of us. No one else is allowed to meddle. If there are other people like Lord Fisher who come to give you orders, you can directly ignore them. Su Yi slightly knit his brows. This might be very hard. I'm only a small merchant without any status. I don't have the support of His Majesty like you. If I offend someone, it will be a problem if I can safely leave Amblemar City. Harvey and 70 looked at each other before revealing smiles. Chairman Su, you don't need to worry about this at all. Everyone knows that you are about to see His Majesty, so no one will cause trouble for you at this time. After you meet His Majesty the King, I assure you that no one will find trouble with you. Of course, this is on the premise that you can cooperate with us in the future. The last sentence was a hidden warning. Su Yi thought about it before asking, All right, Mr. Harvey, I'll believe your promise for now. But the cooperation you mentioned, can I ask what your plans are? How do you want me to cooperate with you? Harvey was silent for a bit before looking at 70 and saying with a serious look, Chairman Su, we should discuss this after you see His Majesty, but since you're asking now, I might as well tell you a bit first. We hope that you can give us the technology for the agricultural magic machines and help our agriculture department build a factory that specializes in producing agricultural magic machines until we can popularize these agricultural magic machines across the kingdom. Hearing this, Su Yi was filled with anger. It seemed like no matter what world the politicians were from, they were all shameless. Compared to Harvey, the faces of those fellows from Banta City's business union were much better. Can I ask, what benefit can my new flyer and I obtain from this matter? Su Yi asked. Chairman Su has invested this much in this matter. Of course, His Majesty will give you enough compensation. Harvey wasn't surprised by Su Yi's question and replied with a smile. If the plan succeeds, His Majesty will give you a special award. This means that as long as you help us complete this plan, you will be rid of your identity as a commoner and become a noble. It's like this? Harvey looked at Su Yi in surprise. Chairman Su, becoming a noble from a commoner. This is the dream of many people. You have to know, other than in times of war, there won't be a special award in normal situations. Su Yi gave a sigh. He pointed at the magic machines in the field and asked Harvey, Do you know how much a magic machine costs? Harvey and 70 were stunned, clearly never thinking that Su Yi would suddenly change the topic. Sorry, I don't know. Harvey thought about it before honestly shaking his head. A small magic excavator costs 58 gold coins. A small harvester costs 70 gold coins. A small plowing machine costs 65 gold coins. A small bulldozer costs 60 gold coins. 1. Su Yi introduced them while observing their expressions. As he introduced them one by one, Harvey and 70's expressions became more and more ugly. When Su Yi finished introducing them all, the smiles on their faces had already disappeared. Seeing the silent 2, Su Yi revealed a smile before continuing. Banta City is only a small city in the kingdom, and our new flyer has already sold over 100 agricultural magic machines. If this number is calculated for the entire kingdom, I think it isn't a problem to sell over 10,000 units. Even if each agricultural magic machine only brings a single gold coin profit to our new flyer, that is still a large profit of over 10,000 US dollars. But Mr. Harvey, according to the cooperation plan you just mentioned, is it equal to me giving up these profits and only getting a title and name? No, you will also obtain the favor of His Majesty. Harvey quickly said, I think that this should be very important to you in New Flyer, right? He looked at him with a ghost of a smile. When he saw his face turn red, he said, Mr. Harvey, we aren't children anymore, so let's not waste words. My idea is very simple. Let us cooperate with the Agriculture Department and help the Agriculture Department with their plan, improving the kingdom's grain yield and letting everyone eat. This isn't a problem. I also have the same idea. But in return, my company and I must receive corresponding compensation. If this compensation doesn't satisfy me, then I can only say sorry. Perhaps the Agriculture Department's plan is very good, but compared to this, I might as well do it myself. Mr. Harvey, I think that you won't doubt that our new Flyers Farmer Support Plan can be implemented in the kingdom, right? Looking over the book out of habit, he felt like his eyes had been blinded. If it wasn't for this persistent book friend, I just found out that you were a crazy fan of likes a few days ago. I was thinking about when I should thank you, and now you're giving me 8,888 gold coins. All right, I'll continue to be flattered. I also have to thank book friend Sun Baiqing for his reward, Dell 58 votes, Why Are They Split? As well as the votes of Everyday Rain, Bright Sky Star, Fatty Sue, Sun Baiqing, Kayuming 33, Ilfox, and the other book friends. Although the subscriptions weren't that great right now, seeing all these people supporting him, he was very motivated. Chapter 104. Even if the weather was a bit cold, Harvey's forehead couldn't help being covered in a few drops of cold sweat. He gave 2 dry laughs and said, Chairman Sue, to be honest, if you don't have the support of His Majesty and the Agriculture Department, if you want to promote the agricultural magic machines with just your new flyer, it will be much harder. Sue revealed a relaxed smile. It's fine. I'm not in a rush. You. Harvey's expression changed. Seeing that the two were about to reach a stalemate, 70, who had been silent on the side, suddenly spoke up. Chairman Sue, it's like you just said, no one is a child, so let's not waste words. 70 looked at Sue and said with a serious look, There's no meaning in arguing. Let's seriously discuss this problem. Chairman Sue, it's not a problem that you're not satisfied with Harvey's proposal. But can you tell us your proposal now? I think that before you came to Ambalmar City, you already had a plan, right? Sue revealed a faint smile. He already knew that although it was Harvey talking to him, the one with the right to make decisions was 70. Now that 70 had finally spoken, it meant that he finally had a chance to bargain with the other side. My proposal isn't complicated. First, I won't hand over the agricultural magic machine technology for now. Because to be honest, I don't trust you, and with your abilities, even if I hand over the technology, it will be hard for you to grasp it. So my idea is for our new flyer to continue producing the agricultural magic machines, and we can improve them according to the requirements of the Agriculture Department, allowing the agricultural magic machines to adapt to the different terrains of the kingdom. Your agricultural department's work is very simple. You just need to be an intermediary. You need to promote these agricultural magic machines to all the nobles and normal farmers of the kingdom, vigorously promoting them. For the nobles, the agriculture department can force them to buy them, and for the normal farmers who can't afford it, we can continue promoting our new Flyers Farmer Support Plan. Like this, I think that it won't take long before we can spread these agricultural magic machines across the kingdom, greatly increasing the use of farmland in the kingdom in a short period of time. Harvey's eyes popped out, clearly not agreeing to Su Yi's proposal. But 70 didn't say anything, so he just stared at Su Yi and didn't say anything. After hearing Su Yi's explanation, 70 was silent for a bit before slowly saying, Like this, your new flyer can earn large amounts of gold coins from selling these agricultural magic machines, right? You just said that your company earns 1 gold coin for every agricultural magic machine sold. I don't think that's right, right? Even if this number was multiplied by 10, it would still be too little. If your company really can sell 10,000 agricultural magic machines in the kingdom, your company will earn a large profit of over 100,000 gold coins. So he shook his head with a faint smile. No, dear Miss 70, you guessed wrong. This number is not multiplied by 10, but by 20 or even more. Harvey couldn't help but cry out. That's more than 200,000 gold coins? God above. Our Lampari Kingdom's tax revenue last year was less than 1,000,000 gold coins. 70 looked at Harvey, and Harvey realized that he had misspoken. He quickly revealed an awkward smile and turned his head away. 70 looked at Sue E and nodded. Such a large profit. It's no wonder Chairman Sue doesn't agree to our proposal. But Chairman Sue, if you keep this price, even with our help, it'll be hard to spread it across the kingdom. Moreover, increasing agricultural production is the most basic national policy of the kingdom. So if you do this, you'll be hindering this national policy. I don't think I need to remind you of the consequences. These final words were without a doubt a naked threat. But Sue didn't reveal a nervous expression at all. He still revealed a relaxed smile as he shook his head and said, Miss 70, I think you've misunderstood. I am 100% in support of increasing agricultural productivity, so I introduced the Farmer Support Plan. My goal is to let the farmers of Banda City enjoy the benefits of mechanized production earlier, freeing them from the fields. It is because of this that I decided to come to Anvilmar City to discuss cooperation with the Agriculture Department. Otherwise, why wouldn't I just stay in Banda City and slowly sell these magic machines? 70 gave a slight nod. That's right. You being able to have this idea means that you aren't a normal merchant with low vision. But Chairman Sue, I still don't understand. Why do you insist on selling your own agricultural magic machines? Don't you know that with the price of several dozen gold coins, even for some small nobles, it isn't a small burden? It's very simple. It's because of the law of business. Since our new flyer is already selling agricultural magic machines in Banda City and has a price, if the same agricultural magic machine suddenly appeared in another place and the price was several dozen gold coins lower, what would the people of Banda City, who have already bought these magic machines, think? How would our new flyer face them? So the price can't be changed. But Sue, he suddenly changed the topic. The price can't be changed, but that doesn't mean other things can't be changed. Miss 70, I hope that the tax department will take back the tax exemption for our company's agricultural magic machines. At the same time, we'll have the agriculture department issue a document that every customer who buys an agricultural magic machine can receive a discount from the kingdom's agriculture department based on their certificate. This discount can be in the form of money or some agricultural tax exemption. In short, it can give these farmers some benefits and compensation. 70 knit her brows. Your idea isn't bad, but the agriculture department doesn't have that much money. Money isn't a problem, Sue said with a faint smile. Our new flyer can take out this money. As for the name, you can just think of one. 70 and Harvey were stunned. Chairman Sue, since you want to take away the tax exemption for the agricultural magic machines and also pay for this, could it be that you're not planning on making money from the agricultural magic machines? 70 said in a surprised voice. This isn't the same as what you just said. If you really don't plan on making money, you might as well agree to Harvey's proposal. No. This is completely different. Sue kept shaking his head. 70 shook his head. If we follow Mr. Harvey's proposal, our new flyer and I will become a vassal of the agriculture department and won't have any initiative at all. I can't accept this at all. 70 couldn't help smiling. Her smile was different from Steele's. If it was said that Steele's smile was as beautiful as a rose blooming, her smile was like a lotus slowly blooming. Chairman Sue really isn't someone who is willing to be under others. All right, Chairman Sue, you're giving up such a large profit. What do you want? 70 asked. Don't tell me that you're doing this for the normal farmers. Of course I'm not that noble. Sue stretched out a finger with a smile. I only have one request, which is to have a piece of land that belongs to me. Hashtag when the night lights came on, Anvilmar City became more lively compared to during the day. People came out in groups of twos and threes, wandering the streets, bathing the entire city in noise. However, when this clamor arrived in front of a courtyard that occupied an extremely large area in the western part of the city, it abruptly stopped, as if it had been cut off by someone's hand. The chairman of the Lampari Kingdom Sorcerers Guild, Palm Zarin, was sitting in the middle of the living room with a calm expression. He was holding a cup of tea in one hand, but he didn't take a single sip. It was unknown what he was thinking about. Feeling that their master wasn't in a good mood, the servants in the manor were all trembling. Not only did they speak in low voices, they even walked like cats, trying not to make any noise. This large courtyard was normally lively, but now it was like a death zone, incomparably silent. After a while, a middle-aged, beautiful woman who wasn't even 40 years old came out of the room. When she saw Palm Zarin, her eyes turned red and tears fell down. "Master, Ankh was heavily injured. You have to take revenge for him," the middle-aged, beautiful woman painfully begged. Palm Zarin looked at her and said with a cold snort, "Take revenge for what? This kid didn't learn well and wanted to teach someone a lesson, but he was taught a lesson instead. Are we going to find trouble with that person? If he can learn a lesson this time, it will be a help to him. Otherwise, he won't know the immensity of heaven and earth and will be taught a lesson by someone sooner or later." Seeing that Palm Zarin didn't listen to her pleas, the middle-aged, beautiful woman immediately became unhappy. She only had one son, Ankh Aaron, and she had doted on him since he was young. When she saw that he had been beaten unconscious and carried back today, she almost fainted from fright. Palm Zarin was annoyed by her crying and impatiently yelled at her before chasing her back into the room. His subordinates in the Sorcerers Guild had already told him everything that had happened at the examination site. No matter how he looked at it, Ankh Aaron only had himself to blame for this matter. Even if Palm Zarin doted on him like his wife, he couldn't say anything. Of course, under normal circumstances, he would definitely take revenge for his precious son and make sure that the person who had injured his son didn't have a good ending. But the key thing was that the person who had injured his son was called Su-E. Palm Zarin wasn't familiar with this name, and at first he thought that this fellow was hiding his strength. He clearly had the strength to injure his son, but he went to participate in the primary grade exam. But after asking around, he found that this Su-E wasn't simple. First, he came from Banda City and was specially recommended by great magician Camilla to participate in the Sorcerers Guild's certification exam. Second, he was with Duke Stagg's eldest son Viscount Leslie, coming to Anvilmar City from Banda City. It said that he had a close relationship with Viscount Leslie. Next, this Su-Yi's residence in Anvilmar City was actually the residence of Banta City's city lord, Count Samo. Su-Yi wasn't an official of Banda City. He was just a normal merchant. For him to be able to live in this residence, it meant that he had a good relationship with Count Samo. Finally, the most important thing was that this fellow would be summoned by the king tomorrow. Palm Zarin couldn't help tapping his head with a headache. If it was just a normal low-grade magician, he could take care of the other side to take revenge for his precious son. But this Su-Yi was related to so many important people that couldn't be ignored, so he had to be more careful when dealing with him. As an old man who was close to 60, Palm Zarin even suspected that this Su-Yi was sent by one of his enemies. He had deliberately injured Ankh Aaron and was waiting for him to jump into a trap. As long as he dared to make a move against Su-Yi, he might suffer a strong counterattack. This fellow called Su-Yi, just where did he come from? Palm Zarin knit his brows. After thinking for a while, he didn't have a single clue. A servant suddenly came in with a strange expression. "Old master, there's a guest here." Palm Zarin snappily waved his hand. "I'm not in the mood to see any guests. Let him leave." The servant didn't leave, and after hesitating a bit, he continued, "Old master, he says he is called Su-Yi." Palm Zarin abruptly stood up from a stool. This Su-Yi, he actually came to find him. Chapter 105. Coming to Anvilmar City this time, Su-Yi Yi had many important things to do, but the most important thing was to meet the king. There was no Sorcerer's Guild exam to attend the next day, so Yi canceled all his plans and rejected Erwin, Rooney, and Cooper's invitations. He calmly stayed in the office to prepare. After eating breakfast, Yi was in a rare daze for a while. Then his thoughts naturally turned to his meeting with Palm's Aaron last night. When he had first met Aaron at the Sorcerer's Guild registration, Yi had only treated him as a child with magic talent who had become too arrogant. But after chatting with Viscount Leslie and learning that this fellow was the son of the Lampari Kingdom Sorcerer's Guild chairman, Palm's Aaron, Yi had some thoughts. After meeting this fellow in yesterday's exam, Yi had purposely angered him and dug a hole for him to jump in. Then he had mercilessly injured him, all for the sake of having a suitable reason to visit Palm's Aaron. With Yi's current status, even if he had Great Magician Camilla's special recommendation, it was impossible for him to visit the high-ranking chairman of the Sorcerer's Guild. After injuring his son, Yi had the right to do so. After hearing Yi's request, Palm's Aaron received Yi without any hesitation. He had wanted to properly teach Yi a lesson and vent his anger for his son, but Yi had sincerely apologized after coming in, adding in the fact that Yi's gift was very precious. With the total value being over 300 gold coins, it made it hard for Palm's Aaron to vent his anger. In the end, this matter was Aaron seeking his own humiliation, so he couldn't blame Yi at all. Yi's attitude was very low, so Palm's Aaron could only suppress his anger and seriously talk to Yi. Obtaining this rare chance to talk to the Sorcerer's Guild chairman, Yi quickly changed the topic to his true goal. He hoped that the Sorcerer's Guild could pass the magic array patent protection. Yi had mentioned this request to the Sorcerer's Guild through Great Magician Camilla before, but it had been directly rejected. Now that Yi was mentioning it in front of Palm's Aaron, of course he wouldn't be this direct. He cleverly mentioned the Magic Fans Power Magic Array protection and suggested that the new flyer could pay a fee to the Sorcerer's Guild each year, not directly mentioning the patent protection. Although Palm's Aaron didn't explicitly say anything, Yi could tell that the Sorcerer's Guild chairman was very moved by Yi's proposal to pay the patent protection fee. Seeing this reaction, Yi didn't continue this topic. This was his first time meeting Palm's Aaron, so there was no need to decide on such a long-lasting matter in their first meeting. It was good as long as the chairman was moved. There was a saying that went like this: those who were 1 step ahead were geniuses, and those who were 10 steps ahead could only be madmen. This plan was less than 5,000 words, but Yi spent an entire morning to finish it. During this time, he not only changed the draft 3 times, but also carefully considered every word in the plan, trying to express his meaning as much as possible, and at the same time, to let His Majesty and his supposed advisors fully understand the meaning behind it. After finalizing the draft, Yi carefully looked it over. After making sure that he didn't miss anything, he carefully organized the plan. Looking at the blank space above the plan, Yi thought for a bit before finally writing the title, On the Importance of Liberating Agricultural Productivity. After writing the title, Yi couldn't help smiling. With the addition of this title, this proposal was clearly like an academic paper. Although Yi had written a lot of papers since university, the previous papers were all related to mechanical engineering. This was the first time he wrote a sociological paper. After carefully putting away the plan, Yi looked at the sky outside the window and found that it was close to noon. There was still some time before lunch. Yi thought for a bit, walked out of his room, and walked to another room not far away. He pushed open the door of the room that was obviously much smaller and saw Sanchali sitting at a table, looking at a piece of white paper and sighing in distress. There was a pile of discarded paper next to the table. It seemed that Sanchali had been distressed for a while. "How is it? Still can't write it?" Yi asked with a smile. Hearing Yi's voice, Sanchali suddenly raised his head. After seeing Yi, he immediately cried. After 2 days of rest in the courtyard, Sanchali not only changed into a clean set of new clothes, but also cleaned up his whole body. His hair and beard were also treated. He looked completely new. Other than his face being a little pale due to malnutrition, he was no different from an ordinary person. But now, with this sad face, coupled with his face that was skinny due to starvation for a long time, it was really ugly and even frightening. Mr. President, didn't you say that you hire me to study magic? Why do you want me to write some damn theory? I don't even know what's going on. Sanchely sighed. He picked up a few balls of paper from the ground and opened them. He found that some of these balls of paper had a bunch of incoherent words written on them, while others had a few diagrams drawn on them. If one looked at each ball of paper alone, no one would be able to tell what they meant. After comparing the things on the balls of paper, He thought for a while and stared at Sanchely. It seems that you still don't understand what I mean. How about this? I'll say it again. Sanchely, the magic array used in that crystal ball of yours was developed by you, wasn't it? Sanchely hurriedly nodded. Yes, I researched it by myself without anyone's help. Since you researched it by yourself, then you should be very familiar with all the details of this magic array, right? He asked again. Sanchely immediately patted his chest. Of course, I've studied this magic array over 1,000 times. I remember every single line of the array very clearly. Then why can't you write it down? He looked at him with a frown. My request is only for you to write down the difference between this magic array and ordinary magic arrays. Since you know this magic array like the back of your hand, why can't you write it down? In fact, what Sui wanted to get from Sanchely was why the magic array he designed had a trace of pre-programming ability. If he could study this thoroughly and carry it forward, they would definitely make the magic machines that He hoped for leaps and bounds. Chapter 106. However, even though Sanchely was the one who had researched this magic array, he didn't seem to understand why it was like this. Moreover, he didn't understand the great significance of this magic array that he had designed, so naturally, he couldn't fully understand Su Yi's intentions. Yet, He couldn't explain it clearly to Sanchely, so Sanchely was vexed for an entire day, but he still couldn't write anything down. Looking at Sanchely's troubled and speechless appearance, He took a deep breath, thinking that he might have pushed him too far. The mages on signs didn't have this kind of awareness before, so it was obviously impossible to force them to immediately have the same thoughts as him. Thinking of this, He calmed down and said to Sanchely softly, "How about this? Don't worry about what I said before. From now on, you must record all the details of this magic array in your mind. Or I'll put it simply, you will teach this magic array to me and let me completely master it. Do you understand what I mean?" Sanchely rolled his eyes. Sir President, if I teach you this, will you still hire me? Seeing Sanchely's uneasy expression, as well as the trace of cunning hidden in his eyes, He couldn't help but frown. This guy, when he was still a beggar, his heart was like dead ashes, and he didn't care about anything. How did he become a completely different person after just 2 days of eating and drinking? He didn't like this kind of person, but he knew that he couldn't just tell him to scram now, so he only glanced at him coldly. "What are you afraid of? Do you think I'll go back on my word?" Sanchely was silent, but the expression on his face and the rolling of his eyes revealed his thoughts without a doubt. Short-sighted, He gave a snort in his heart. He reached into his chest and took out 10 gold coins to throw onto the table. "Here, this is the first month's salary I'm giving you in advance. Take it first. If you let me master this magic array, I'll give you another 5 gold coins as a reward. Also," he took a piece of paper from the table, snatched the pen from Sanchely's hand, and quickly drew a magic array on the paper. "This is a burning magic array. Study it for a bit, then modify it according to my requirements. If you succeed, you will be rewarded with 10 gold coins." Sanchely's eyes immediately lit up. "Sir President, what is your request?" "It's very simple. You should be able to tell that this is a standard burning magic array. After it is activated, faint flames will seep out of the array. However, my request is for these flames to burn for 5 minutes after the array is activated. Then, they will be extinguished immediately." Sanchely was taken aback. Then just cut off the magic power supply. Let me finish. What I meant was that the flame was extinguished, but the magic circle was still working. Then, 2 minutes later, the flame appeared again. After burning for 5 minutes, it was extinguished again. Do you understand what I mean? He said seriously. Sanchely thought for a moment, and then his face turned ugly. While keeping the magic circle working, you don't want the flame to appear. Sir President, what about the heat of the magic circle? You wouldn't want the heat of the magic circle to disappear, right? Then this magic circle would become a completely different magic circle. He couldn't help but nod in praise. Although this Sanchely was a bit greedy and had a slippery personality, his mind was still sharp enough. No, I don't want the heat of the magic circle to disappear, but to maintain the heat without seeing the flame. Do you understand? Sanchely let out a sigh of relief. After pondering for a moment, he said with a smile, "That's much simpler. Sir President, give me some time. I should be able to complete the task." But Sanchely hesitated for a moment before showing a flattering smile. "Sir President, you see, can you give me these 10 gold coins in advance? Or if 10 isn't enough, 5 gold coins is also good." He stared at Sanchely for a while until he lowered his head. Only then did he take out 10 gold coins and put them on the table. "Sanchely, as long as you can make enough contributions to the Chamber of Commerce, then money isn't a problem. But I also hope that you won't hide anything from me." "Of course not. Why would I hide anything from Sir President?" Sanchely laughed dryly, but his hands didn't hesitate in the slightest as he swept the 10 gold coins into his pocket. Sui frowned as he looked at Sanchely, who was smiling reluctantly, and thought that if this guy didn't have the ability to control magic circles like programming, he wouldn't have been willing to hire him. After lunch, Sui continued his discussion with Sanchely. With Su Yi's outstanding magic talent and his in-depth study of magic circles, he quickly grasped the basics of the wind magic circle that Sanchely had set up on the crystal ball. It had to be said that the wind magic circle that Sanchely had researched was indeed unique. Although the complexity wasn't as high as Sui had imagined, it was only slightly more complicated than the standard revolving wind magic circle, but it was clearly different in many aspects. And it was precisely because of these differences in details that the specific performance of this magic circle was also very different. However, mastering these details didn't mean that Sui had really completely grasped this magic circle. Although he could completely replicate this magic circle and make it do the various changes that seemed to have been programmed in the crystal ball, Sui still hadn't completely figured out what made this magic circle so different. What Sui needed was to summarize the rules of the programming of the magic circle, and not just learn this one magic circle. Another meaning of industry was popularization and mass production, and a single special case wouldn't help at all. However, even Sanchely himself couldn't clearly explain what the rules were, because he had researched this special wind magic circle by chance and didn't have a complete set of theories. Hence, while learning this magic circle, Sui also urged Sanchely to research the fire magic circle that he had given him, and asked Sanchely to clearly explain all his thoughts during the research. Through the joint research with Sanchely, Sui believed that he would have the opportunity to find the rules and form a reasonable and complete theory before applying it to other magic circles. Time flew by quickly as he was engrossed in research. Sui only had a little idea in his heart, and it was already afternoon. At this time, the palace sent someone to inform him to enter the palace and wait for an audience with His Majesty the King. After confirming that the person was indeed from the palace, Sui immediately packed up his things and followed the person out of the office. When he was strolling around Anvilmar City, Sui had also passed by the palace, but he only took a few glances from afar and didn't get close. Now that he was officially summoned by His Majesty the King, Sui could finally openly walk into the palace. This made him feel a little excited. Not only was it because he could discuss matters after meeting His Majesty the King, but it was also because of the matter of entering the palace itself. Although many countries on Earth had preserved their historical palaces, Sui basically didn't have the opportunity to enter them. Understanding them through television and various news sources was naturally not as good as experiencing it for himself. However, after entering the Lampari Kingdom's palace in the center of Ambilmar City, Sui was a little disappointed. This palace didn't seem to occupy a large area from the outside, roughly the size of 2 or 3 sports stadiums on Earth. After walking in, Sui found that apart from the various buildings and decorations being more luxurious and exquisite, there wasn't much that could surprise him. Of course, it was far from the magnificent palace that Sui had imagined. Observing this ordinary palace, Sui couldn't help but make an estimation in his heart. The palace represented the strength of a country. The Lampari Kingdom's palace wasn't luxurious enough mostly because of the Lampari Kingdom's national strength. As an ordinary small country in the southwest of the Signs, the Lampari Kingdom's national strength couldn't be compared to the Malar Empire and the Kanla Empire. Even if it was compared to the other 10 kingdoms, it could only be considered below average. Naturally, its national strength couldn't be considered very strong. Of course, a weak national strength didn't mean that the palace had to be simple and plain. For example, there were many poor counties on Earth where the government buildings were tall and majestic. They were extremely imposing and didn't look like they were poor at all. Compared to this, even if the Lampari Kingdom's national strength wasn't strong, the palace could still be built to be incomparably luxurious. The reason why it looked like this was mainly because the Lampari Kingdom's royal family had always advocated frugality. The tradition left behind was to pay more attention to practical results than to appearance. In addition, the Lampari Kingdom had experienced a great turmoil 10 years ago, causing the national strength to greatly decline. The current king who took over during the turmoil was even more diligent and didn't allow any extravagance. This palace hadn't been renovated for more than 10 years and was much worse than the manners of many nobles. Sui's gaze swept across the mottled walls of the palace. Even the surface paint had faded a lot. He thought that if His Majesty really paid attention to practical results and didn't like vanity like the rumors said, then His Majesty's ideas should be more easily accepted by His Majesty. As a mechanical engineer, Sui also admired people like His Majesty because in the mechanical industry, there was no room for falsehood. After the Chamberlain led Sui into the palace, he didn't take him too far. After turning 2 corridors, he was given a small room to rest temporarily. "Wait a minute." Sui called out to the Chamberlain who was about to leave. "Can I ask if there are any special orders for me to enter the palace so early?" The Chamberlain replied expressionlessly, "I can't tell you. I'm just following orders to bring you here." Looking at the stone-faced Chamberlain, Sui knew that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of him, so he waved his hand. Contrary to Sui's expectations, after the Chamberlain left, no one came out to greet him. Sui stayed alone in the room for close to half an hour before he finally couldn't stand it anymore and stood up. When he stood up, he was shocked to find that the door of this small room had been locked from the outside. Sui's face immediately darkened. It looked like this was a trap. Chapter 107. Sui reached out to touch the door. Just as he was about to exert force, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart and quickly retracted his hand. In that split second, he had clearly felt a strange magical fluctuation coming from the door of the room. This ordinary-looking door was actually covered with a magic array. If Sui continued to exert force, this magic array would definitely be triggered. Sui pondered for a moment, and once again reached out his hand. His finger lightly touched the door of the room. Sui probed a very weak trace of magic from his finger and slowly probed the magic array on the door. In order to develop a qualified magic machine, Sui's research on magic arrays had now reached an extremely high level. Thus, he easily probed the magic array on the door. It should be a grade 3 wind magic array, wind blast magic array. Once this magic array was triggered, there would be a strong gust of air rushing out from the magic array. Although the power of a grade 3 magic array was not great, and even if one was directly hit by the gust of air, The power of the wind blast magic array was enough to directly blow a person away. Even if the person did not die, he would definitely be injured. After checking the door of the room, Suyi's finger moved from the door to the wall, and then used the trace of magic to probe down along the wall. In the end, he discovered that other than the door, there was actually a wind blast magic array set up on the 4 walls and 2 windows of this room. In other words, although this small room didn't seem to be anything special, it had actually become a small prison. Su-yi withdrew his probing hand and frowned slightly. The person who had set up this trap did not seem to want to take his life, but only wanted to trap him here. However, this was after all the palace. How long could the other party trap him here without being discovered? Su-yi's mind turned, and he immediately understood. The other party should be here because His Majesty the King was about to summon him. When Su-yi left the office, it was already around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It took him nearly half an hour to travel from the office to the palace. In addition, he had been waiting here for a while. It was almost 5 o'clock when His Majesty summoned Su-yi. The person who set the trap did not intend to trap him to death, but only wanted to trap him for a period of time so that he could not meet His Majesty on time. Thinking of this, Su-yi's heart sank. With his current status, it was very rare for him to have the opportunity to meet the king. If he failed to arrive on time, it would undoubtedly leave a very bad impression on the king. Even if Su-yi could explain later, he might not have the chance to meet the king again. Even if he did, the king might not believe him. In any case, if he missed this opportunity, it would be a very serious blow to Su-yi's plan. Time was of the essence. Although Su-yi still had a lot of questions in his heart, he did not have the time to think about it. He looked at the door that was still tightly shut, snorted softly, and slapped it with his palm. A surge of mana that was many times stronger than the one he used to investigate just now came out from his palm. It instantly turned into countless streams that covered the entire door. The wind blast array that was set up on the door was completely covered by Su-yi's mana in the blink of an eye. However, there was no trace of it being triggered at all. Instead, under the effect of Su-yi's mana, it slowly dissipated. After a while, a weak light green light flashed on the door, and then a breeze blew through the air, causing Su-yi's hair to flutter slightly. Su-yi smiled. The wind blast array on the door had been directly destroyed by him, and could no longer be triggered. Without the obstruction of the wind blast array, Su-yi only needed to aim at the wind blast array on the door and release a small fan. The plug that was blocking the door was cut down from the middle. With a creak, the door of the room opened. You think you can trap me with just a level 3 magic array? You're looking down on me too much. Su-yi snorted softly and stepped out of the door. However, just as he stepped out of the door, a few figures suddenly flashed by outside the door and blocked Su-yi's path. Who's there? How dare you be so presumptuous in the palace? Capture him. Accompanied by an angry roar, 3 strong men wearing the uniform of the palace guards pounced on Su-yi together. Seeing these 3 fierce-looking fellows pouncing on him, Su-yi was a little hesitant. Destroying the trap was not a problem, but if he were to attack the palace guards, he was afraid that there would really be a problem. However, the current situation did not allow him to hesitate. The 3 palace guards were already in front of him. If he did not resist, he would only be captured. Su-yi sighed softly in his heart. He raised his hand and was about to release a spell. Stop! At this moment, a soft shout was heard. The hands of the 3 palace guards were about to touch Su-yi's body, but after hearing this soft shout, they immediately stopped and remained motionless. Su-yi was stunned for a moment and took 2 steps back. Only then did he disperse the magic power that had been fully condensed. Looking in the direction of the voice, he was stunned again. The person who had suddenly appeared and shouted at the palace guards to stop was actually Harvey. Sensing Su-yi's gaze, Harvey nodded at Su-yi and then turned to one of the guards who seemed to be the leader of this group of palace guards based on his attire. In a stern voice, he asked, "What's going on?" The guard leader immediately bowed to Harvey and answered loudly. Reporting to Lord Viscount, a few of us happened to be patrolling nearby and rushed over when we heard an abnormal noise. Then we saw. The guard leader pointed at Sui. He broke through the door of this room. We don't know this person and thought that he was an assassin. So, we were going to capture him and interrogate him. Harvey frowned and thought for a moment. He waved his hand. All right, there's nothing for you to do here. Go. The guard leader was a little hesitant. Lord Viscount, but Harvey glared. He's His Majesty the King's guest. Do I need to explain it to you? The guard leader trembled and quickly stood up straight, shaking his head solemnly. Then why aren't you leaving? Why are you standing here like idiots? Harvey shouted again. The guard leader glanced at Sui and hurriedly left with the other guards. After they were far away, Harvey walked to Sui with a sullen face and asked in a low voice, Chairman Sui, what's going on? Sui thought for a moment and described what he saw after entering the palace. After listening to Sui's story, Harvey frowned. He obviously couldn't figure it out, but he only thought for a moment and shook his head. There's no time to think about these things now. Chairman Sui, it's almost time for His Majesty the King to summon you. Come with me. I'll take you to see His Majesty the King. Sui nodded and followed Harvey to the other side of the palace. After walking in silence for a while, Harvey saw that there was no one around and suddenly said to Sui in a low voice, Chairman Sui, when you see His Majesty the King later, please don't mention what just happened. Sui looked at him and nodded with a smile. Don't worry, I know what's important and what's not. Harvey nodded approvingly. Chairman Sui is indeed a sensible person. Let me tell you a piece of good news. His Majesty the King has seen the results of our experiments these days and is very satisfied with the results. He has also praised you in the new flyer. When he sees you later, as long as your performance is satisfactory, he will definitely give you a very generous reward. Sui laughed. The reward doesn't matter, as long as His Majesty the King can accept my proposal. That will depend on whether or not Chairman Sui can convince His Majesty the King. Harvey smiled. After walking for a while in the palace, Harvey led Sui to a large garden and stopped. I can only send you here. In a moment, the Chamberlain will lead you in, and then you can see His Majesty the King. Harvey thought for a moment and said in a low voice, Remember, don't say anything unnecessary. Sui looked at him and was a bit surprised why he was this nervous. No matter what, this was still the royal palace. Could it be that Harvey really thought that he could hide what happened here from the master of the royal palace? Of course, Sui wouldn't express the doubts in his heart. He just gave a slight nod to show that he understood. Harvey waved his hand at the Chamberlain on the side and explained Sui's identity to the Chamberlain. Then the Chamberlain signaled to Sui that he could follow him in. When Sui was about to walk in, it was like he suddenly thought of something and stopped. After pausing, Sui came to Harvey's side and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, Viscount Harvey, since His Majesty places importance on the agricultural magic machines, the best method is to let nature take its course and not do anything unnecessary. Otherwise, if there are too many things added, it will be hard to predict what the result will be. Harvey's eyes slightly narrowed, and his gaze looking at Sui suddenly became sharp. After looking at Sui for a while, Harvey said in a voice that was who knows how much colder, Chairman Sui, since you are a smart person, you should know that there are many things that are unrelated to you, and you don't have the ability to meddle in them. Sui revealed a smile. He thought that this Harvey's shrewdness wasn't deep enough. After being casually probed by him, he actually revealed the true face that was hidden under the mask. Of course, it was also possible that he disdained hiding anything in front of Sui. In the end, it was like he said, with Sui's current status and strength, there were many things that he didn't have the ability to meddle in. Therefore, even though he knew that what he encountered after entering the palace today was very likely related to the battle between some important figures, and that he was only being used as a pawn, he still could not do anything about it. He could not even express any opinions. Of course, Sui didn't care that much about this. Anyway, the battle between these important people didn't matter to him. He just wanted to achieve his goal. Thinking of this, Sui shook his head and threw out all the irrelevant thoughts in his mind, focusing his mind again. If the goal of creating an industrial system was considered a war, then this meeting with the king would without a doubt be an important battle in the early stages of this war. Chapter 108. Your Majesty, this picture is the scene of the small magic harvester harvesting wheat. He spread out the picture on the table and excitedly introduced it to the Lampari Kingdom's current king, Cain Lampuri. Look, the wheat in this field is very lush. If it was harvested by humans, it would take an entire day to harvest it, and then it would take 3 days to a week to dry it in the sun. Then it would take a day or two for oxen to pull the stone mill to shuck it, and finally it would take around a day for the dust to be removed before the harvest is complete. Moreover, once the weather is strange, it will greatly affect it. This entire process adds up to 10 days to half a month, and the effects aren't good, so we'll waste a lot of wheat grains and wheat ears that aren't completely shucked. But if we use our new flyer's small magic harvester, this wheat field can be finished in less than an hour. Look, after the wheat is caught in the front of the small magic harvester, in just the blink of an eye, it will turn into wheat grains that will come out from the back. The person responsible for harvesting just needs to prepare the cloth bag. Just how much time and effort does this save? King Cain Lampuri was 48 years old this year. He was in the prime of his life. He had a square face, looked very dignified, and didn't have any extra fat on his body. It could be seen that he normally focused on exercising, so he was very spirited. Hearing Su Yi's eloquent introduction, he only occasionally interrupted to ask a few questions. Most of the time, he seriously listened and revealed a thoughtful expression. Seeing that Su Yi's introduction of the small magic harvester had come to an end, King Cain Lampuri thought for a bit before suddenly asking, "Chairman Su, you keep saying small. Does that mean that there will be a bigger magic harvester?" He was a bit surprised. He never thought that after listening to him for so long, the first thing the king cared about was this. "Your Majesty's guess is right. Our new flyer will also release a slightly larger neutral magic harvester and even a larger large magic harvester. Of course, in my plan, there will be many different models for the magic harvester to meet different needs. It won't be strictly limited to the small, medium, and large sizes." King Cain gave a slight nod. "That's right. You being able to have this idea means that you didn't design this small magic harvester out of impulse and inspiration. I thought that your new flyer kept releasing all kinds of new magic machines, and this small magic harvester was just an idea from you. So I was worried that you didn't consider everything. I'm afraid you're just here to sell these things to me. Now, it seems that I have underestimated you." Su Yi said in surprise. "Your Majesty, from your tone, it sounds like you already have a long-term plan." "That's right." King Cain revealed a faint smile. "I understand Count Semied and believe in the description in his letter, so I didn't doubt that the agricultural magic machines your new flyer produces have powerful abilities. But I can't confirm that your new flyer doesn't have more comprehensive abilities, like the various models of magic harvesters you just mentioned. Although our Lampari Kingdom is mostly plains, the terrain is still very complicated. It's impossible for a magic machine to be used in all kinds of terrain. If your agricultural magic machines can only be used in the terrain around Banda City, there's no meaning in promoting them on a large scale." Su Yi's eyes instantly lit up. "Your Majesty, this means that you've already agreed?" King Cain gave a laugh. "If it can increase the grain yield, why wouldn't I agree? Actually, when I decided to summon you, I had already decided to promote these magic machines. The only problem is how to promote them." After saying this, King Cain stopped and looked at Su Yi with a ghost of a smile. Su Yi immediately understood that the negotiations had begun. Su Yi thought for a bit before saying with a smile, "Your Majesty, I still adhere to my basic principle, which is that the technology for these agricultural magic machines can't be given to the agriculture department. If you insist, perhaps I can't reject you, but New Flyer and I won't participate in promoting these agricultural magic machines." After saying this, Su Yi nervously looked at the king. He was very clear that in this half-slave and half-feudal world, there was no need to doubt the authority of the king. If the king insisted on Su Yi handing over the technology, Su-yi couldn't go against it and could only hand it over. But like this, Su-yi would lose the large market for agricultural magic machines, and New Flyer would suffer serious losses because of this. The most important thing was that this would be a very bad start. The king could force Su-yi to hand over the agricultural magic machine technology, but what if he wanted other parts of New Flyer's technology in the future and force Su-yi to hand it over? In order to prevent future problems, whether it was in front of Harvey or in front of the king, Su-yi had to clearly express his rejection. King Kane looked at Su-yi for a while before suddenly saying with a smile, "Chairman Su, do you think that I am a greedy person? Or do you think that I am a stupid person?" Su-yi was surprised before quickly shaking his head. "Of course not. You are the most outstanding and wise king of our Lampari kingdom. How could I think that you are greedy or stupid? Since it's like this, why do you think that I want you to hand over the agricultural magic machine technology?" King Kane asked. "This. Could it be that Viscount Harvey didn't convey your intentions?" Su-yi mentioned Harvey's proposal from the other day. King Kane narrowed his eyes and gave a soft snort. He waved his hand and said, "That was just his proposal. I didn't say anything like this. Now I'm here to promise you. No matter what new magic machines your New Flyer develops, they all belong to your New Flyer. I'm not interested in your New Flyer's technology. I just care if these agricultural magic machines can be of use to the fields of our Lampari kingdom, increasing the grain yield of our kingdom. Do you understand what I mean?" Su-yi was instantly overjoyed. With the king's words, the stone in his heart finally fell down. With the king's promise, it was equal to obtaining a protective talisman. Su-yi didn't need to worry that his technology would be stolen by others. "Right, Your Majesty. I'll use this chance to give you another suggestion." Su-yi decided to strike while the iron was hot, so he directly mentioned the patent protection law that he had been thinking about the entire time. After hearing Su-yi's detailed explanation of the patent protection law, King Kane thought for a while before giving a slight nod. "This idea isn't bad. According to what you said, with this patent protection law, each company will be able to protect their own technology. Then they won't need to worry that their technology will be stolen by others. Like this, those lazy companies will think of ways to develop their own technology, right? Your Majesty really is wise." So he couldn't help praising. This King Kane could actually see the most positive effects of the patent protection law. He really was worthy of being the wisest king in the history of the Lampari kingdom. Other than this, the companies that apply for patent protection will also have to pay a patent protection fee. That way the kingdom's finances will receive a bit more income, and the companies that apply will be willing to pay. Su-yi added. King Kane looked at Su-yi. "You were the one who proposed this, and you're actually taking the initiative to pay a patent protection fee?" Su-yi straightened his body and revealed a righteous appearance. "Your Majesty, if you want to gain something, of course you have to pay a price. This is the awareness that a merchant should have." King Kane laughed before pointing at Su-yi and saying, "Are you reminding me that I have to pay a corresponding price for obtaining benefit from your New Flyer?" Su-yi laughed and didn't reply, but he also didn't deny it. King Kane laughed for a while before slowly stopping. He said with a nod, "If you want to gain something, you have to pay a price. This isn't wrong. But Chairman Su, I don't agree to your proposal from before, so I won't agree to your request from before." "Why?" Su-yi knit his brows. "Your Majesty, I feel that the proposal I gave to Viscount Harvey and young Miss 70 last time was already very perfect. Not only did it consider the benefits of both our New Flyer and the kingdom, it also considered the problems that might occur when promoting these agricultural magic machines. This matter will definitely be easier for both sides to work together." "You're right, but I don't want it to be this troublesome." King Kane took a document from the side and gave it to Su-yi. "There are some ideas that I have. You could take a look." Su-yi took the document in a confused manner and began looking through it. The proposal in this document was indeed much simpler. King Kane represented the Lampari Kingdom's agriculture department to give orders for agricultural magic machines to New Flyer, and New Flyer only needed to complete these orders according to the agriculture department's requirements. They would also be responsible for the technical training, maintenance, and other matters of the agricultural magic machines. To put it simply, this proposal was a very normal business contract. Other than the buyer being the kingdom's agriculture department, there was nothing official about it. Or to put it more directly, His Majesty was just discussing a very normal business deal with Su-yi. Of course, this business was a bit large because His Majesty's first order was for 10,000 small magic harvesters. Su-yi carefully looked through the document several times and found a problem. Your Majesty, the current market price for a small magic harvester is 70 gold coins. If you order 10,000 at once, that would be a high price of 700,000 gold coins. Do you have that much money? Su-yi couldn't help doubting this. Based on the information that Harvey had accidentally revealed, the Lampari Kingdom's tax revenue last year was less than 1,000,000 gold coins. How could they take out 700,000 gold coins at once to buy a small magic harvester? King Kane revealed a smile and spread his hands as he directly said, I don't. Su-yi couldn't help feeling a bit depressed. He rubbed his nose and said with a bitter smile, Your Majesty, our company is a small business. We don't sell on credit. King Kane was amused by Su-yi and gave a few laughs. He looked at Su-yi with a teasing look and said, Although I don't have money, I have some things that are worth a lot of money. Chairman Su, what do you want? Su-yi's eyes instantly lit up. Chapter 109. After seeing the king, Su-yi was even busier for the next 2 days. His Majesty didn't just order 10,000 small magic harvesters from Su-yi. Other than that, he also ordered 5,000 to 10,000 agricultural magic machines that Su-yi brought. For such a large order, there were many details that needed to be taken care of. So Su-yi spent the past 2 days negotiating with the people sent by His Majesty and the officials from the Agriculture Department. Of course, it was impossible to complete the negotiations in 2 days, but with the king's attention and encouragement, the negotiations went very smoothly. In just 2 days, they had already decided on their initial intentions. According to His Majesty's suggestion, the Lampari Kingdom would buy 6 kinds of agricultural magic machines from New Flyer in His Majesty's name, which range from 5,000 to 10,000 units. Of course, with New Flyer's current production capacity, they definitely couldn't complete such a large order. But because other than New Flyer, there weren't any other companies that had the technology to make agricultural magic machines, they finally decided to let New Flyer provide them in batches. The first batch was 500 of each kind of agricultural magic machine, which was to be delivered before the spring planting tomorrow. Agreeing to this order actually gave Su-yi quite a headache. Although with the addition of the 100 dwarves from the Angola tribe, the production capacity of the Magic Machine Workshop had greatly increased to complete an order of 3,000 agricultural magic machines before the spring planting next year. It was still very hard. Su-yi agreed because His Majesty didn't agree to lower the first batch of orders below 500 units. Because if it was lower than this, it would be hard to show the advantage of scale production that Su-yi mentioned, so he couldn't make His Majesty make up his mind. After all, for an order of several tens of thousands of agricultural magic machines, it required His Majesty and the Agriculture Department to pay a large sum of several million gold coins. This was a sum that the Lampari Kingdom's finances couldn't support, so His Majesty proposed to Su-yi to use the kingdom's resources to pay for it. Su-yi naturally welcomed this. Even if his request for a piece of land had been rejected by the king, his request for an iron mine and a magic crystal mine had been satisfied. According to the preliminary agreement between both sides, Su-yi would receive the 2 iron mines in Banda City and the 3 magic crystal mines to the northwest of Banda City that had already left Banda City's territory. Because Su-yi didn't have any understanding of these mines, this was just a preliminary agreement. Once Su-yi and New Flyer inspected these mines and were satisfied with them, this agreement would come into effect. After receiving these mines, Su-yi had to follow the order and complete the small agricultural magic machines by next year. He also had to help the Agriculture Department reconstruct all the farmland in the kingdom. So right now, Sue, he was facing a large amount of pressure. Before next spring, if New Flyer couldn't complete the first batch of orders, not only would they not be able to obtain the mines, the more important thing was that he and New Flyer would lose the trust and support of His Majesty. If this really happened, it would without a doubt be a heavy blow to New Flyer. It would also have an irreversible impact on Su Yi's long-term plans. So this batch of orders had to be completed, and there couldn't be a single mistake. But as a mechanical engineer, Su Yi's work was very precise and didn't allow the slightest mistake. So he was already used to this pressure and even learned how to use this pressure as motivation. Although the first batch of orders and the following orders for agricultural magic machines were very large, Su Yi felt that he could use this chance to reconstruct and expand the magic machine workshop, which would increase the development of New Flyer. As long as he seized this chance, there was no doubt that New Flyer's prospects would become very good. After being busy for 2 days, the third day was the day of the Sorcerer's Guild's 5th grade exam. According to Su Yi's original plan, he should have participated in the 4th grade exam yesterday and directly went from a primary grade magician to a 4th grade magician. But thinking of Viscount Leslie's request from the other day, Su Yi considered it and finally decided to skip the 4th grade exam and directly participate in the 5th grade exam. The number of magicians participating in the exam today was much less compared to the first day of the primary grade exam. When Su Yi came to the exam site, he found that including him, there were less than 50 people. It couldn't even compare to the people in the corner on the first day. It was different from the primary grade exam site. Su Yi didn't recognize a single magician here. After all, magicians that dared to participate in the 5th grade exam had to be at least a 4th grade magician. There weren't many 4th grade magicians, and it was very hard to break through to the 5th grade, so there were very few magicians participating in the 5th grade exam each year. In the primary grade exam site, Su Yi, who was already 27 years old, seemed a bit old, so people would look at him with disdain. But in the 5th grade exam site, he was much younger, and it was easier for people to feel that he had outstanding talent, so naturally he attracted the attention of others. When everyone saw that Su Yi didn't have a single magician badge on his chest, they were even more surprised. It can't be that this kid wasn't even a primary grade magician and he came to participate in the 5th grade exam, right? In front of everyone's surprised gazes, Su Yi reported his name to the Sorcerer's Guild staff member in charge of the exam. After the staff member in charge of the exam heard his name, he looked at Su Yi in surprise. Then he knit his brows and said in a deep voice, "Su Yi, are you sure you want to participate in the 5th grade exam? I have to remind you that although you have Great Magician Camilla's special recommendation and can skip levels to participate in the exam, you only have one chance. If you fail, you won't be able to get a special recommendation in the future, and your evaluation in the Magician's Guild will drop a level because of this. I hope you understand the consequences." Hearing the staff member's words, the surrounding people understood. So this kid actually had the special recommendation. No wonder he could directly participate in the 5th grade exam. Everyone looked at Su Yi with a trace of disdain. Since this kid wasn't even a primary grade magician, why did he think he could pass the 5th grade exam? This was too much of a joke. But other than disdain, there was even more doubt in everyone's hearts. Since this fellow had received the special recommendation of Great Magician Camilla, he should have a very strong talent for magic, which was why Great Magician Camilla appreciated him. Perhaps he was a magic apprentice that Great Magician Camilla secretly took in, concentrating on studying magic. The reason why he didn't participate in the Sorcerer's Guild's exam before was because he wanted to shock everyone in this exam. Thinking about it, a young magician participating in the Sorcerer's Guild's exam for the first time could actually directly become a 5th grade magician. How shocking of a piece of news would this be? Su Yi never thought that the people around him would have all these strange thoughts. Actually, he didn't care if he could pass the exam or not. He didn't even care about participating in the Sorcerer's Guild's exam. If it wasn't for Great Magician Camilla and Steele urging him, he would have been too lazy to participate in the exam. If it wasn't for Viscount Leslie's request, he wouldn't have directly participated in the 5th grade exam. Actually, his current strength was between the 4th and 5th grade magicians. If he participated in the fourth grade exam, he had a 90% chance of passing. But if he participated in the fifth grade exam, his chance of passing would drop to 50% or even lower. Compared to the primary grade exam, the fifth grade exam didn't have much miscellaneous content. There was only a written exam and an actual combat exam. There was no need to mention the actual combat exam. The written exam was to test a magician's attainments in magic theory, so it was also very important. What Sui didn't expect was that the fifth grade exam's written exam was actually related to fifth grade magic arrays. In order to study magic machines, Suyi's understanding of magic arrays far surpassed other magicians of the same level. He had even discussed various fifth-grade magic arrays with great magician Camilla a long time ago, so he knew all the details like the back of his hand. Naturally, this exam wasn't hard for him. In less than half an hour, Su-yi had already easily finished the written exam. Seeing Su-yi leave the exam room, the surrounding magicians participating in the exam all looked at him with shocked gazes. This fellow, could it be that he was a true genius? Could it be that his true strength far surpassed that of a fifth-grade magician? However, in the actual combat exam that began an hour later, these magicians who had just been shocked by Su-yi were all stunned. It wasn't that Su-yi's performance wasn't good, but in the actual combat exam, Su-yi's magic was only at the level of a fourth-grade magician. Even if he could occasionally use one or two fifth-grade spells, it was clear that his control over them wasn't that good. No matter how they looked at it, Su-yi's true strength was only at the level of a fourth-grade magician, so it would be very hard for him to pass the fifth-grade exam. So everyone looked at Su-yi with strange gazes again. This fellow, could it be that he was just purely arrogant? After the actual combat exam, Su-yi's performance didn't fall to the bottom of the 47 magicians participating in the exam, but it was very clear that he was below average. According to the tradition of the Sorcerer's Guild, there was a limit to the number of magicians who could pass the exam each time. Therefore, under normal circumstances, Su-yi definitely wouldn't be able to pass the fifth-grade exam. Feeling the mocking and ridiculing gazes from the crowd, Su-yi's expression was calm, and he was unmoved. As a mechanical engineer, he was very particular about being realistic. His current strength was indeed between a fourth and fifth grade magician, so it was expected that he wouldn't be able to pass the fifth grade exam. It wasn't unacceptable. Moreover, he didn't really care about the results of the exam. However, after waiting patiently for 2 hours, the results of the exam were announced. Everyone, including Su-yi, was stunned at the same time. Su-yi's name appeared on the list of those who had passed. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.